Bro, imagine being 14 years old and your first family responsibility is executing your own dad. Yeah, not homework, not chores, straight up guillotine DLC. This kid Leon got promoted to head of the family before he even hit puberty properly.
Look at me, sure. I'm the captain now.
And instead of crying in the corner like a normal side character, bro said, "Fine, if the world wants monsters, I'll become the CEO of necromancy."
I'll do it myself.
And trust me, this manhwa does not waste time. We got a demon lion built like a hellcat, uncles plotting like failed Game of Thrones extras, goblins getting folded in a dungeon speedrun, fake humans getting exposed harder than TikTok scammers, and an MC so emotionally unavailable, bro treats murder like checking attendance. The craziest part? Everybody thought House Marbus was finished. Meanwhile, Leon is in the basement like, nah, I'm just reinstalling the family software.
You're a little confused, but he got the spirit.
The best scene early on has to be when this innocent-looking rescued girl tries acting cute, and Leon instantly goes, "Nice try. Torch count says you're the imposter." Bro really used Among Us logic in a death dungeon. And from that moment, you realize this isn't your average weak revenge MC. This dude is cold, smart, ruthless, and low-key roasting everyone by simply existing. So today we're diving into the Necromancer family's young heir, where the MC loses his father, his emotions, and basically his humanity, but gains an undead army, demon powers, and enough aura to make every enemy regret waking up that morning. Trust me, this one goes insanely hard. The battlefield is pure chaos, as the deafening cries of troops and horses fill every corner of the air, and everyone present remains locked onto a single objective, which is destroying the necromancer turned monster. Amid all of it, Nox von Leonhaber stands completely still with his sword in hand, and his eyes cast downward, while holding a composed expression, even as everything around him descends into noise and movement and desperation. Leon, on the other hand, is doing his best to work out why any of this is even happening, and he watches as a massive army advances forward, driven by a knight's rallying cry to destroy what he calls a terrible devil, while Leon himself keeps his gaze fixed ahead and lets his mind drift back to something his devoted friend once said to him. Nox shows no emotion through any of it, and that is not entirely out of indifference, but rather because his understanding of emotions has always been incomplete at best, and that fact has never been more visible than it is right now. Then, without much warning, a massive creature emerges, and as Nox begins to swing his weapon, the memory of his friend's words comes back to him, along with the image of a single tear that had fallen from his eyes while saying them, that apparently is all Nox needs to make up his mind. So with his eyes full of rage, he rushes forward and leaps high to confront the monster with his white hair falling across his face as he moves, and when it is over, he lands safely and positions himself directly in front of Leon, staring straight at him with a stillness that makes the surrounding chaos feel almost distant. The atmosphere between them tightens immediately as Leon shifts his full attention to Nox and asks him directly why he betrayed his allies and, furthermore, why he would ever choose to strike a bargain with the devil, since Leon is genuinely trying to find some logic in a decision that makes very little sense to him. Nox closes his eyes for a moment and says those words remind him of someone, and then adds, without much sentiment, that there is no point in Leon searching for the reason anymore, because as far as things currently stand, it is already too late for any of that. Leon holds his ground nonetheless, and tells him that these words may carry no weight for Nox, but for him they do, and that distinction matters quite a bit. Nox, however, does not waver in the slightest, and tells Leon plainly that if he wants answers and wants to put an end to the agony, then killing him is the only path left open, because Nox already knows that Leon is well aware there is only one way to end all of this, and that is by going through him. Leon responds that if those are truly the terms Nox wants honored, then he will honor them without hesitation. Almost immediately, the blue energy-covered dead knights reappear behind Leon, and Nox moves through them without breaking his stride as he slashes and draws blood that seals itself shut the very moment it appears. Leon then raises his hand and releases his mana and commands his undead to launch their attack, which sends explosions rolling across the field, with one of them getting blocked, while Nox continues carving through the undead as though it costs him very little effort. Shortly after, a purple beam strikes a monster, and Nox pushes forward wearing a wide smile as he tells Leon with what sounds like genuine appreciation that he has grown considerably stronger. A book then falls open as energy begins to gather, and a large symbol forms behind Leon, and he directs a fallen knight toward Nox, who receives that with nothing more than a smile, right before another explosion shakes the entire field. Leon stumbles from the force of it and catches an attack coming his way just in time, and his eyes snap open with purple mana rising around him as a large undead moves forward to shield him from the blow. He steadies himself and looks toward his old friend, and quietly settles it within himself that if killing Nox is what it takes to get to the truth, then that is exactly what he is prepared to do. With soldiers lying dead across the field around them, Leon presses forward and still carries the same question that has followed him through all of this, as he turns over in his mind why Nox would betray them the way he did. By now, he has come to understand that this duel will not resolve itself on its own, and he still cannot make sense of why Nox chose to walk this road alone, especially when he clearly understood that only one of them was ever going to leave. This field alive. A man is locked in a guillotine with a sharp blade hanging directly above him, and Leon looks up at that shadow and feels that nothing in the world is more frightening than what he is staring at right now. He holds a knife, and the prisoner waiting beneath that blade is his own father. Nearby, a girl raises her hand to her face in confusion at the cruelty of what she is witnessing, while the boy standing beside her quietly warns her to keep silent. The ruler sits on his throne as people around them whisper about the cruelty on display, and guards stand positioned nearby while war continues spreading across the land, and leaves common people with absolutely no choice in how they live, or survive. Crows circle above as bloodshed consumes the eastern lands, and many are brought forward for execution, and among those who have fallen because of the war is the once respected Marbas family. The young man looks down and tells himself that desperate times demand harsh actions, and that the strong rule while the weak suffer, and some are reduced to stealing simply to stay alive. Heads are cut, and people always watch in fear, and yet they always watch nonetheless. The prisoner remains silent throughout all of it, while the ruler, Count Alan de Sylvester, who serves as head of the noble house, orders the execution. To begin, the boy steps forward as he has been ordered to do, and his father remains tied and bound as the count tells him plainly to cut the rope. The boy raises his hand, and the shock that moves through everyone watching is immediate, and then he cuts it. The blade drops and blood splashes, and he stands there staring as his father dies right in front of him, with blood covering both his hands and his face. A single tear falls as the reality of what he has just done settles over him, and he understands that he has become a killer. Not long after, he is named the new head of the Marbas family, and when his subordinates gather and press him about matters that cannot be ignored, Leon stands and calmly asks them to wait and says he needs more time to decide how to move forward. They push back and tell him the matter cannot afford to wait, and that every delay causes further harm to what was once a great house, and yet he does not rush his answer. He walks down the hallway afterward and thinks about how, following the death of his father, Lord Rune, he has become the head of the family at only 14 years old, dressed in a long black robe that feels like it carries more weight than it should. He looks down at the mosaic floor and thinks about how their house, which was once known as a powerful line of necromancers, has been reduced to ruin. Leon stops at the row of portraits and looks up at them and thinks about his parents and what they would do if they were standing where he is standing now. He closes his eyes, knowing full well that the dead cannot answer, but still finding himself reaching for some kind of guidance anyway. He continues to adore and walks toward it, carrying the hope of restoring honor and strength to his house, and above that door hangs a portrait of Wellen von Marbas, who was the founder of the family and the only necromancer of his era that anyone could speak of with genuine awe. Leon thinks about how their family rose to prominence entirely because of him, and how no one who came after ever came close to matching what he was capable of. He enters a large office and reaches out to touch the book that holds the full history of their family, and thinks about the founder who could destroy enemies like a force of nature by commanding and controlling the dead, and who over time conquered many lands before making a pact with the demon Marbas in exchange for knowledge and secrets that went far beyond what anyone else had access to. The book itself is marked with a red eye and holds within it the secret of necromancy and has been passed down through the family ever since. As Leon turns through its pages, he suddenly hears a voice inside his head, and the surprise of it stops him cold, especially given that an anti-magic field surrounds the space and makes something like that feel impossible. He asks who is there, and the voice tells him it is not an enemy, though Leon makes clear without any hesitation that he does not trust that. Dark energy begins filling the room, and a massive lion appears before him, and Leon asks where exactly he is, as the demon questions whether his ancestor ever told him about it, and then notes that it can sense the bond with his father is no longer present, and asks directly who it was that killed the former lord. Leon, standing there with a slight tremor running through him, admits that he was the one who killed his own father. The beast's eyes begin to glow as it opens its mouth and lets out a heavy roar, And the sound alone is enough to freeze Leon in place for a moment as an old memory suddenly forces its way back into his mind. He sees himself again holding a knife covered in blood, and right after that comes the image he clearly never wanted to revisit, his father's head rolling across the ground. He stands there in silence, watching the memory replay inside his head with visible horror, but the demon looks straight at him and calmly tells him he is wrong to blame himself, because cutting the rope does not make him a murderer, no matter how much he keeps trying to carry that guilt. Leon lowers his eyes quietly and disagrees, telling the lion that this is not the truth and that even the demon already knows that. The creature studies him more carefully after hearing that and begins to sense a strange darkness inside him, and soon, purple mana starts gathering around the boy's body, which makes the demon pause and wonder what kind of experiences this child has gone through to still be carrying such strong hidden power without breaking under it. A red liquid slowly spreads beneath Leon's feet while a thin mist of mana surrounds him, and the lion's eyes widen as it watches this unfold, clearly not expecting something like this from him. For a brief moment, it even imagines the boy's ancestor standing behind him, as if quietly watching everything, and the thought crosses its mind that this child might one day surpass even them. The beast then raises its paw and calmly introduces itself as Marbas, one of the 72 demons of hell, before lying down again in a relaxed manner and explaining that it has returned from the demon world because it now prefers living peacefully among humans instead of continuing whatever business demons usually keep themselves busy with. It calls Leon's ancestor its faithful friend and openly admits that it was the one who shared the knowledge of necromancy with him, which later became the special art passed down through the Marbas family. Leon listens carefully and responds that many legends about Marbas are still told even now, then asks directly whether the demon truly taught his ancestor that forbidden art people continue to whisper about. The lion confirms this without hesitation and explains that although it is now bound to the Necronomicon, it was once a far more powerful demon than it appears at present. Leon then mentions that their ancestor always believed necromancy existed naturally within their bloodline, almost like something they were born carrying whether they asked for it or not. The demon remains silent at that statement, which already feels like a quiet answer by itself. And Leon's expression tightens slightly as he finally asks why Marbas left their family behind after everything that happened. The anger in his eyes is not loud or dramatic, but it is clearly there. Marbas slowly stands and asks him why he believes it ever left in the first place. Leon explains that ever since the founder's time, no one in their house has ever reached the same level again. Marbas responds bluntly that the truth is much simpler than Leon probably hoped it is, because they are too weak to hold that level of power, and none of them have been able to match the founder's talent, which naturally led to the family's decline. Leon touches his lips for a moment, lowers his head, and quietly says he believes him, because there is little reason to argue against something history has already made obvious. Looking down, he adds that this is simply the natural end for weak people who keep losing in war again and again until there is nothing left to protect. Marbas then asks whether that is the reason he accepts his father's death so easily. Leon replies that it does not matter now and that his father's death is nothing special, which sounds calm on the surface, but carries the weight of someone who has already forced himself to move forward, whether he was ready or not. He raises his hand to his face and asks the lion for a favor, but the beast immediately shows its teeth and refuses, explaining that a favor benefits only one side, and any agreement with a demon must always be a trade. Leon frowns slightly and says the deal he wants is simple. He wants to gain necromancer power. The demon stares at him carefully, as if trying to decide whether he is serious or simply desperate, and Leon calmly asks whether Marbas can give him that power. The demon turns its head away and says there is nothing special about him, then asks whether he truly believes he even has the ability to handle something like that. Leon closes his eyes briefly and answers yes, because a powerful demon would never continue speaking this long with someone completely useless. He adds that ordinary people would lose their mana and their sanity just from standing in front of a demon like this, and would likely die afterward. So the fact that he is still alive must mean he has at least some potential. Marbas quietly acknowledges to itself that the boy is not ordinary at all and clearly thinks more sharply than most people his age, then reminds him once again that every contract with a demon is always a trade and never charity. Leon nods and says he understands that very well and already knows he has very little to offer in return. The demon suddenly laughs, stands properly this time, and agrees to make a deal. Leon immediately asks what he wants in exchange, and Marbas smirks before answering that he wants everything from him. Leon's expression softens slightly after hearing that, and he gives a faint smile while saying he is honestly glad his weak self still has some value after all. Marbus's eyes widen as many people sit around a long table. An old man touches his chin and says the current head is Leon, a boy with only a little power but still the one who holds the right to make decisions for the whole house. The others remain silent as he continues, saying that since he is Leon's uncle and closest relative, he should be the one to take responsibility for the family's future instead. Another man agrees with him and adds that it would be foolish to trust such responsibility to someone so young and immature. Kirchel crosses his arms as someone calls him the best choice to lead. Pullen then speaks up and reminds everyone that Leon is the only direct heir, and Lord Pullen adds that there has never been any tradition of choosing someone outside the direct bloodline. The Count quickly argues that tradition does not matter when the family itself is in danger, especially since enemies from the Sylvester house are already moving against them, and he insists survival must come before everything else. Suddenly, Pullen slams the table and shouts that they all owe loyalty to the former lord and should stand together instead of fighting among themselves like this. At the same time, he worries that Leon will not accept losing his position so easily. The old man mocks Pullen's loyalty and warns him to be careful with what he says, hinting that everything has already been arranged. Hearing this, Pullen realizes he has only been a pawn in the situation and begins to sweat. At the same time, a huge lion sits in front of Leon. The demon says everything is fine except for one thing, and as energy begins flowing around Leon, he explains that their contract will place limits on Leon's power. Leon calmly says demons need to take mana from humans anyway, then asks what he needs to do next. The lion snaps his fingers and says there is at least one good point, and for now he will spare the boy's mana. A cluster of energy appears around him, and Marbus changes into a smaller beast, explaining that keeping his previous form is difficult. Leon says it is true, and points out that the lion now looks small and almost like a pet. The demon becomes annoyed and tells him not to say that again. Leon replies that repeating it would clearly not be pleasant, and the demon says they understand each other and should move forward. Marbus then asks if Leon truly wants power like his ancestor, and explains that he must follow the same path. Leon agrees. Under the full moon, the demon says they will go to the hidden shrine, though it will be dangerous. Leon answers that he is ready. Marbus then leads him through the forest and explains that the path is like a maze for anyone who is not from their bloodline. As they walk, Leon remembers his father saying that only the true head of the family can enter the shrine. The demon confirms that others fail because they do not have pure dark power. Soon thick mana fog blocks their way, and when they reach a door, the demon tells him the test will begin there. Inside, Leon walks down old stairs with mold on the walls while the demon reminds him he will receive no help. Leon accepts this and says it is a test of his strength. He then follows a glowing book called the Necronomicon, which shows him how to gain Necromancer power. Deeper inside the dungeon, torches burn along the walls when Leon suddenly hears a sound. The fire turns green, and goblins appear, bringing a tied girl with them. Leon reads in the book that he must take lives first. He closes it, draws his sword, and faces them. A goblin attacks him, but Leon dodges the strike and cuts it down. With blood on his face, he quietly says this will be the first life. Many years earlier, two people stand in a cemetery. One of them is Leon's father, who tells his son to listen carefully and then asks him what their great house values most. The boy shows no emotion as he looks ahead. Near them stands a large statue of a praying angel, and Rune answers his own question by saying their house values death above all because they are necromancers who control the dead. Other people are also present in the cemetery, quietly standing nearby, as if this is not a private lesson but something meant to be remembered. The boy thinks for a moment and then asks how they can claim to honor death when necromancers must take lives in order to gain power. Rune smiles slightly and tells him he has studied well, explaining that dark mages are feared across the world, but that does not mean they should become cruel. He places a hand on his son's shoulder and asks him to promise one thing. No matter who he faces, if he ever holds power over life and death, he should end lives as gently as possible. Leon looks at him with a cold expression, already wondering whether that is a promise he will truly be able to keep. Back in the present, a goblin stands in front of him. His eyes look empty as more monsters begin surrounding him, and a dead body already lies at his feet. He thinks it would be better to aim for the neck, since that would end a life faster and with less pain, and then he takes a fighting stance. Marbus watches quietly and notices that the boy does not seem especially well trained at first glance, yet his strikes are unusually precise. He cannot immediately tell whether that accuracy comes from luck or talent. Leon says he has already defeated one enemy, though he admits it was mostly luck because goblins are dangerous opponents. More of them begin approaching slowly, and he tightens his grip on his sword, thinking it would not be wise to face them all at once. His vision is starting to fade as the darkness thickens around him, and when he notices that one of the torches has gone out, he understands he will have to adjust quickly. He prepares himself to move faster and rely on careful, precise strikes. In the next moment, he suddenly shifts position behind one of the goblins. His eyes shine as he attacks and pierces its neck, and as the creature dies, another torch goes out. The remaining goblins roar and rush toward him from every direction, but his face stays calm. At the last moment, he avoids their attack and immediately counters, killing another one. A second torch goes out. He wipes the sweat from his face and realizes his eyes are slowly adjusting to the darkness, although his blade is already badly damaged. Looking at it, he understands it was only meant to be a ceremonial weapon, not something built for real combat. Suddenly, he turns as an angry goblin jumps toward him. He throws his weapon and cuts across the creature's cheek, which surprises the demon watching nearby. Leon moves again without hesitation and runs toward the fallen sword. He picks it up, steps forward, and pierces the goblin through, then pulls the blade free and finishes it without stopping. After all the monsters are dead, he walks forward and notices a girl tied in the corner. She looks at him with clear hope in her eyes. He removes the rope from her mouth, and she immediately begins trying to thank him. Then her expression suddenly changes as fear fills her face when he stabs her without hesitation. He pulls the sword back and calmly says he remembers his father's warning about monsters that can take human form. He stabs her again. Her eyes change, fangs appear, and claws grow as she tries to rise. Leon recalls his father saying that those who deceive others do not deserve a quick death. He keeps watching her and says that beings like this should feel the same fear they cause in others. His eyes begin to glow as he says a lesson in pain would be fitting. The last torch is still burning, but after her scream echoes through the dungeon, it finally goes out. Vinches a lively bar, chicks dance while fine liquor sits lined up across the counter, and Kerchal lounges on a couch with them like he has already won, loudly declaring that it is finally his turn because the Marbus house will soon be his. One chick beside him smiles and backs him up, saying no one in their right mind would object to a noble man like him leading instead of leaving things to some inexperienced kid. Another points out, almost amused, that he is using the Sylvester family to climb up, and the first one leans in, placing her hands on his shoulders, calling it a bold move to make deals with enemies just to rise higher. Kerchal laughs it off, saying she is giving him too much credit, then casually admits they will serve the Sylvesters for now. He takes a drink and adds that even that is better than following Leon, who, in his view, would drag the family straight into ruin, so stepping in now is just common sense. His eyes light up as he says winners are never judged, which sounds confident, even if it is doing a lot of work to justify the situation. A man across from him asks what he plans to do about Leon, reminding him that people still support the boy because of his father. Kerchal answers without hesitation that they will simply announce the boy's death, since the dead cannot speak. The man nods, raises a toast to Sir Kerchal as the next head, and they all drink like the decision is already locked in. Elsewhere, Alan sits in his office with guards and calmly states that their plan to control the Marbus family is moving along smoothly. A scarred man confirms that Kerchal is already part of their setup and says they now only need approval from the Imperial Palace to start the war. Sylvester smiles and calls them fools for thinking he would pass up the chance to start another war, adding that this situation actually makes things easier. Looking at Kerchal's image, he says a great house will fall because of a traitor from within, then orders everything to be prepared. First the father, now the son, he says he is looking forward to watching their despair. Back in the dungeon, the last torch goes out, leaving Leon standing in darkness with blood still on his sword. A dead monster lies in front of him, and he wonders if that was the final one. Then, without warning, all the torches light up again, this time with normal flames. Leon runs a hand through his hair, taking a moment to process it. At the same time, Marbus suddenly bursts into excitement, jumps onto him, and shouts that a contract like this is unheard of. Leon is caught off guard and falls back into the pool of blood, while the demon sits on him, waving his paws and laughing, saying he already has enough strength to survive even in a full camp if he just learns control. Leon stays composed while the demon presses his cheeks and keeps going on about how he attacked the last monster without hesitation, even though it looked human. Leon eventually stands up, brushes it off, and says he would rather not test himself against a full orc camp. He sets the demon down and adds that orcs hate humans deeply. Before he can finish, Marbus cuts in and says that part does not matter, then asks how he knew the last monster was still alive. Leon pauses briefly, then explains it was all about the torches. He points out that when they first entered, the flames turned green, showing the presence of monsters. Each time he killed one, a torch went out, but one torch always stayed lit, which meant something was still alive. That is what made him suspect the captive girl. Marbus listens and is clearly surprised by how calmly Leon figured that out, noting that kind of clear thinking is not common at his age. Watching him now, he starts to feel there is something more to the boy than just his mana. Then he notices a strong, dark energy surrounding Leon and smiles with interest. A book appears in the air and opens on its own to a page explaining that he must take lives and then raise the dead. Leon takes the book, remembers the goblins he killed earlier, and quietly calls out for the undead. The demon smiles with satisfaction and says everything is correct, telling Leon to look at the goblins he has killed. Leon follows his order. Marbus then tells him to send mana to his eyes, and when Leon does, his vision changes, and he sees magical energy in the air. The demon explains that thin threads are coming from each dead body and leading somewhere unknown. Leon notices that these threads are connected from the book to the bodies. Marbus says necromancers call these threads a death line. Leon quietly says they are lines beyond death and asks if they connect souls to another world. The demon confirms this and says necromancers pull souls back into bodies, mixing their own mana to raise them as undead. As he finishes, the goblins stand up with marks on their foreheads and dark energy around them. Marbus shows how it works, and one goblin rushes at Leon but stops suddenly. The demon explains this is like controlling them. Leon says he understands. Marbus tells him to try it himself. Leon asks one question first, saying his father has told him turning humans is harder than monsters, and asks if he can reach that level. The demon smiles and asks who he plans to use. Leon answers Kirchel von Marbus, his uncle. At the same time, Kirchel is in a bar, drinking with others and saying his life has improved since the former head died. His companion agrees and says they only need to remove the last heir. Kirchel says killing a boy is easy and raises a toast. Suddenly, the air shakes, ropes snap, and a chandelier crashes onto the table. Kirchel frowns, and a girl says strong magic must have caused it. Hearing this, Kirchel looks away, then raises a finger to his lips and tells the girl to be quiet. He stands up and loudly asks, "Who is there?" saying no one will dare attack him in Marbus territory. A familiar voice answers, asking why he is so sure. The old man turns quickly and sees Leon standing there with empty eyes. Kirchel smiles and mocks him as the young head of a fallen clan, then waves his hand and his servants step out. Leon narrows his eyes, then speaks coldly, thanking him for recognizing his lord. Kirchel says there is no reason for such a late visit and asks if he has urgent business. Leon replies calmly that it is strange to ask, and questions whether a lord needs permission to visit someone who is not even a true vassal. Anger fills Kirchel's eyes, and he says Leon is not a worthy lord. He then shouts that Leon knows he is not worthy. Laughing, he mocks Leon, saying his father is gone and will not save him now. Leon shows no emotion, and calmly says he understands he must protect himself. Kirchel mocks him again, saying coming alone is foolish. Leon raises his eyebrow and says it is foolish to think he comes alone. Kirchel frowns, but suddenly the floor shakes. Dark energy rises from below. He feels something far beyond normal magic and looks down in fear. Goblins rise from the ground. He asks in shock if they are the undead. Leon steps down and confirms it. Kirchel panics, saying even his brother cannot do this. Leon replies that their house has regained necromancy. Furious, Kirchel orders his men to attack. A blade moves toward Leon, but a goblin stops it and strikes back, killing the soldier instantly. Blood splashes everywhere. Kirchel watches in horror as his men are quickly killed. Fear takes over him and the few guards left. Blood splashes everywhere, and Kirchel stares in shock, feeling something is very wrong. Watching the chaos, he thinks this is far beyond normal. Dark magic gathers in his hand, and he realizes Leon has mastered necromancy. Sweat runs down his face as he wonders how it is possible. A magic ball forms in his hand, and he shouts in anger, asking what Leon has done to copy the founder's power. Leon looks at him calmly and asks if it is strange for the head of the Marbus family to control the dead. Kirchel shouts that this is impossible, as necromancy has been lost, and even his father cannot use it. Dark energy surrounds Leon while Kirchel holds his magic and refuses to believe he is different. Leon raises his hand and says he will prove it. His eyes shine as he warns that resisting is foolish. Dark energy covers the goblins, and they rush forward with loud cries. Kirchel throws magic attacks at them, and they stop for a moment. He smiles, thinking he has won, but the damaged goblin suddenly moves again, glowing with dark energy. Fear fills his eyes. He turns and orders his men to distract them, but they are already dead. He attacks again, but nothing works, and he realizes his power is only slightly better than a beginner's. Furious, he shouts that Leon will regret this. A goblin attacks and pierces his shoulder. Blood spills as he tries to gather magic, but it breaks apart. He asks how Leon can betray his own family. Leon walks closer and speaks calmly about winners and losers, saying only winners decide what is right. Kerchel listens in anger as Leon says forgiveness belongs only to the winner, and once he has held that place. Leon slightly raises his eyebrows and says his uncle once believes he is strong when he betrays his father and makes a deal, but times have changed. Hearing this, Kerchel becomes filled with anger and tells him to be quiet. Leon raises his hand and says he will not wish him well, but instead hopes he will suffer. Looking at the book above, he says he will remember this day and take away his hope as punishment in the name of the Marba's head. After that, the goblins attack. Within moments, Kerchal lies dead in his own blood, his hand cut off nearby. The demon watches with satisfaction and says the boy is truly ruthless, adding that even a demon would be moved by such a scene. He asks how Leon can use such power so well on his first try, as if he has done it for years. Leon looks at his uncle's body, then crosses his arms and smiles slightly, saying he has an idea. Later, several people sit in a meeting room, wondering why Kerchel has called them. Some fear an attack from the Sylvester house, while others say they must wait. Soon, the doors open and Leon enters. People whisper, confused why he is there. Leon walks forward calmly. When asked why he comes, he turns and asks if they expect his uncle instead. He stands by the head seat and says Kerchel cannot attend. His eyes shine as he says it is more accurate to say he is unable to come. When asked what he means, Leon sits down and says simply that his uncle is dead. Shock fills the room as he adds that he has killed him himself, then calmly asks if there are any more questions. Shock and fear appear on everyone's faces as they stare at Leon in silence. One man slams his fist on the table and demands a full explanation, asking how Leon can justify killing the oldest member of the council right after his father's funeral. Leon frowns slightly. Another man says that even as the head, Leon must answer to them. Leon's eyes glow faintly as he says Kerchel is a traitor. Everyone freezes. Leon explains that his uncle has betrayed his father by giving information to House Sylvester and is planning to use his position to take control. One man stands speechless. Leon raises his hand and says he does not understand why they still try to defend him despite these crimes. He crosses his arms calmly. A man with long blonde hair thinks that Kerchel must have called the meeting but never arrives, which means he is truly dead. Another man grows angry but knows this is not the time to argue. One person realizes Leon must have used powerful magic to kill him. Suddenly, he stands up in shock, wondering how Kerchel can commit such betrayal. Another quickly says they have nothing to do with it and do not know of any plot. Leon taps the table and orders silence. His eyes shine as he says that even if they do not lie, they are still guilty of ignoring the danger within their own house. Fear spreads among them. Then one man asks if there is real proof Kerchel is a traitor, warning Leon might have killed an innocent man. Leon stands calmly and says they react just as expected. When asked who predicts this, Leon looks at the demon on his shoulder. Then he lowers his glowing eyes and says he will now show them proof of Kerchel's betrayal. A strong wave of magic fills the room. Without lowering his hand, Leon says that as the true son of the Marbas clan, he is calling a lost soul. The ground shakes, and goblins begin rising from the floor, more and more each second. A book opens above his hand. Everyone screams in fear, asking how this is possible. Then Kerchel appears among the undead. A man shouts in shock, asking if Leon has really found their lost art. Fear spreads quickly. Leon looks at them calmly and asks his uncle to confess before losing his mind. Kerchel stands, surrounded by dark energy. Someone asks how this can happen, but Leon says he is tired of that question and asks why it is surprising, since necromancy is their family's craft. The goblins smile and move forward. One man screams for everyone to run, while another curses in fear. A man turns and sees his friend without a head, and the body falls. Panic spreads. One man begs for mercy, but his legs are cut off. Leon stands before him, his eyes glowing, and says the meeting is not over. His book shines as he says they must listen until he finishes. Kerchel moves toward the injured man and speaks. Leon asks if anyone there does not know of his crimes. Kerchel answers that everyone who serves the old lord has turned against him and knows everything. The room falls silent. Hearing this, Leon shows no emotion. The survivors beg for forgiveness and promise loyalty, but his monsters kill them all. Leon watches calmly and raises his hand, saying that with his authority as head, he declares the return of necromancy to their family. Less than a minute, everyone except Leon is dead. He looks at the bodies, then turns to a man hiding nearby and asks where Pullen is. The servant shakes in fear, knowing he is found, and says Pullen has been sent to prison for rebellion. Leon turns away and orders him to show the way. As he walks, he stops at the door, looks back with burning eyes, and warns the servants they can run, but he will not promise their safety. The servants sit frozen in fear even after he leaves. Later, a man enters Alan's office and gives him a letter. Alan reads it and smiles, saying even the Empire has abandoned the Marbus family. His companion agrees, saying they have nothing left except their ancestor's name and weak resources. Alan says everything is going as planned, and that soon war will begin, bringing the Marbus family down. When asked about the final preparation, the servant says everything is ready. He adds their victory is almost certain unless a true necromancer appears again or the founder returns. Alan smiles and says the war will be theirs. In the dungeon, Pullen kneels, begging for forgiveness for allowing Kirchel's plans and accepting death. Leon watches him and thinks he is one of the few loyal men left and must be kept. Leon helps him stand and says there is much to do, so he needs his help. Pullen cries and asks how he can help. Leon tells him to wash and come to his office later. Pullen smiles with gratitude and promises to serve him with complete loyalty. During the day, clouds move across the blue sky, and in the evening it is the same. At night, Leon looks up at the stars. Suddenly, the demon jumps onto his shoulder and quietly licks his paw. Marbus asks what he plans to do next, since the choice is his. Leon thinks for a moment. Later, Pullen comes into the office and, hearing the plan, frowns in shock and says it is dangerous. He explains that going to meet the Sylvesters while pretending to be Kirchel will require perfect acting to copy his behavior. Leon raises his hand and asks if this will be enough. A dark shape rises from the floor and slowly forms into a human body. Soon, Kirchel appears. Pullen is confused and afraid, wondering how Leon can stay calm after turning his own uncle into a walking corpse. He has heard rumors, but seeing it is different. Then he becomes excited, saying it is true that Leon has mastered necromancy. Leon calmly agrees. Pullen thinks about how powerful their house once was, and questions why they have suffered so much. He then says controlling Kirchel's body can fool the Sylvesters for a while, but they will discover the truth because a corpse cannot copy a person perfectly. Leon replies that this is not Kirchel's real body, but a doppelganger he has found. He explains it is a creature that can copy a person completely, including memories and behavior. Pullen is shocked. Leon remembers finding the monster earlier and learning it copies travelers before killing them. The demon confirms this and explains its nature. Leon repeats the name doppelganger, and the demon laughs. Then Leon uses dark magic to revive it. The creature's eyes open again, and Marbus says it is useful that such a servant is now under Leon's control. The monster girl is brought back to life and stands still before her new master. Leon turns to the demon and asks if this is really possible. Marbus smiles and says yes, explaining that the creature can only copy people the necromancer has met. Dark energy gathers above the girl, and the demon adds that it cannot copy someone stronger in magic. He looks at Leon and says he understands, though he is still inexperienced. Leon stays silent while strong energy moves around the book in his hand. Marbus warns that even if a soul is controlled, its loyalty is not certain, and if control is lost, it will fade away. He suggests leaving the Marbus house if no clear solution is found. Leon refuses, saying he will never abandon his family. He thinks about innocent people being killed if he leaves, and says he will even accept death for them. Marbus wonders why he cares so much. Then the girl's form changes into energy. The demon tells Leon to turn it into a useful servant. Leon asks if he knows the creature, and Marbus says it is one of his old puppets. Leon uses the book to call the soul back, and the energy becomes a man. The demon hits him and tells him to wake up. The creature changes shape and turns into Leon. They speak briefly, and Pullen watches, saying this power can fool the Sylvesters. Leon agrees. Pullen asks why Leon will stay instead of escaping danger. Leon says it is his duty to protect his house, and Pullen promises to follow him. The boy looks away and says it is true, adding that he does not have any big plan. He only wants to become a worthy head of the house and understand what that really means, because he still does not know. So, he decides to gain time to find the answer. Pullen looks at him in surprise. Leon then smiles, and says this also means he will stop anyone from taking things from them. He remembers his father and says that if he avoids past mistakes and protects what he has, he will one day understand why he is fighting. After that, he looks kindly at Pullen. Later, in his room, the doppelganger in Leon's form says he does not know the house has fallen so low and that there is much work to do. The demon angrily tells him to show respect, but Leon says he does not care about such things. The demon then says he can sense that Leon is not good with social behavior. Leon asks how he knows, and the demon says he can smell it, explaining that Crow once serves the ancestor as a loyal assassin. Leon says that shapeshifting is useful for such work. The doppelganger agrees, saying he is more useful than the demon, which makes the demon angry. While they argue, Leon says he needs Crow's ability and asks if he can copy his uncle. The doppelganger agrees. Suddenly, there is a knock. Pullen enters and gives Leon a letter from the Sylvesters. Leon reads that they challenge House Marbus and will attack within a month if they refuse. The demon says they have little time and suggests retreat. Leon instead creates dark magic, burns the letter, and says he does not want to wait. The demon warns him about the enemy army, but Leon smiles and says everything will be fine, showing the souls he has gathered and saying this time he will not spare anyone. The next day, many people in the street talk about Kirchel's sudden disappearance, saying it is a bad sign since the previous head has just died. An old man frowns and says he hopes the young lord is safe, adding that the boy must be suffering after losing another family member. Another man says he hopes he can face the coming trouble. A young master, sweating slightly, says they should not worry because Lord Rune's son can handle it. The old man nods and says the Sylvesters will not attack soon. At that moment, Pullen appears behind them and warns them to be careful with their words. Leon stands nearby, and the people quickly bow, saying they are only talking and offer their condolences. One man says, losing an uncle at such a time is very sad. Leon replies calmly that his uncle is still alive but has suddenly fallen ill. He smiles and assures them there is nothing to worry about. As he walks away, he thinks that to fool his enemies, he must first fool his own people. He tells Pullen to make sure the remaining vassals stay silent, and Pullen agrees. After a moment, Pullen asks why he has come to the city center and offers to help. Leon says he needs to see something himself. Marbus then says he senses strong magic in a building nearby. Leon stops and tells Pullen to wait outside. He orders him to seal the place and not let anyone enter or leave. Leon goes inside and sees destruction and blood everywhere. Workers are cleaning, but one man has cat ears. Leon asks if it is the one, and the demon confirms it, noticing his strong magical energy and injuries. Thinking it is a waste to ignore such talent, Leon raises his hand and asks the boy for a moment. The worker quickly bows, pressing his head to the floor, and apologizes, saying their place has trouble last night, and asks him to return later. The owner stands behind Leon, then suddenly kicks the boy and shouts angrily, asking how he dares speak like that. She turns to Leon, apologizes, and calls the boy a lowly beast man. She looks at Walter with contempt and slaps him again, saying he is nothing but a worthless mongrel and should know who he is speaking to. She points at Leon and says he is the young master of the Marbus house. The boy bows and says he is new and does not know. Leon calmly repeats that he wants a minute with him. The owner says she has time, but Leon says he is not speaking to her and points at Walter. The boy looks shocked and lowers his head, unsure of what is happening. Suddenly, a dark glow forms in Leon's hand. Walter stares as the energy flows into his wounds, healing them quickly. He looks at his body in surprise and asks if he has really been healed. Leon lowers his hand and asks again for a moment. The owner frowns and says the boy is her slave and cannot act freely. She says Leon should speak to her instead. Leon looks at her calmly and thinks she does not know what has happened earlier. He smiles slightly and asks her two questions. Since when is slavery allowed, and why she still treats him without respect after his father's death. The owner grows tense. Leon closes his eyes, and a dark aura begins to spread. Everyone feels his power as he angrily asks if she refuses to accept him as the true ruler. Marbus hears these words and smiles wildly, saying they are well spoken. An open book in front of Leon gives off strong magic, and Marbus, sitting on his shoulder, says that even if Leon looks young, anyone who disrespects someone with a demon contract will not be forgiven. Leon stares at the girl and says he is not only worried about how she calls her, but also demands that all her slaves be freed at once. Marbus frowns, and anger appears on the owner's face when Leon gives her 10 minutes, warning there will be no mercy after that. The girl suddenly smiles and mocks him, asking if he is ready for the result. Leon calmly reaches out his hand to Walter and says it is fine if she admits her mistake. Walter looks at him in shock and asks why he is helping him, since he is only a worthless slave. At that moment, the owner snaps her fingers, and her men surround Leon. She shouts that it is over and orders them to capture him, saying Kirchel will protect her. Leon shows no emotion as dark magic flows from his hand, and goblins appear and attack. Fear fills the owner's eyes. Leon takes a blade, gives it to a goblin, and uses it to kill a man instantly. Soon, all her men are dead. Walter watches in shock. Leon turns to him and says he is not worthless and will be needed from now on. Walter cannot understand, thinking he is only a wanderer. He remembers being beaten as a child by others who call him useless. Suddenly, his eyes turn black and shine, and he stands up with power, asking why they cannot leave him alone. Walter smiles in anger, realizing people hurt him only because of his race. With anger in his eyes, he shouts, asking why they treat him this way. Soon, tears fill his eyes. One day, he understands he has been too naive before. The children who bully him lie dead in front of him. Seeing this, he is filled with horror and asks what he has done. At first, he cannot accept it and is afraid to face the truth that he has become the monster they call him. Unable to accept it, he runs away. In the present, Leon returns the weapon to the goblin. The owner shouts in anger, saying his actions will not change anything and that he cannot challenge Kirchel. Leon stays calm. A bright light appears as he says he will no longer remain weak and will become a worthy head of the Marbus house. Dark energy forms in his hand, and he says he will prove it. The goblins surround the woman, and Leon declares there is no place for her on his land. She shouts insults, but in the next moment she is killed. Leon turns away. Walter looks at him and feels no fear, even though Leon has killed many. Leon walks closer and asks if Walter will join him, saying his skills are useful. Walter is surprised and asks to make one request before agreeing. He shows his power and says he comes from demonic wolves, a hated group. He asks if he will always be treated badly and how long his people must suffer. Leon answers firmly that it will end now. Walter is shocked. Leon says he does not know everything about his people, but if they suffer unfairly, he will change it. From now on, Walter will serve as a true vassal of House Marbus. Hearing this, Walter looks at him in surprise. They stand silently, and Leon smiles and gives him his word. After hearing these words, tears fill Walter's eyes. Leon smiles and says that from now on he will become a true vassal of the House of Marbus. He holds out his hand and gives his word. Walter, without hesitation, places his hand in his master's and tears run down his face. Leon looks at him kindly and asks if he accepts. Walter bows his head and says yes, adding that he will gladly serve him. At the same time, warm sunlight shines on a grand castle. A man enters the hall where the Emperor of Arkheim, Esteban von Arkheim, sits silently. Crown Prince Louis looks at the visitor and asks why he has come. The man bows and says, "A letter has arrived from House Sylvester." The prince shows displeasure and says he should not deal with such matters, as his father will not approve. The emperor remains silent. The man quickly says he only comes to share good news. Louis frowns and asks what he means. The man explains that it is about House Marbus, a family they have long despised. He suggests supporting House Sylvester to destroy them. The prince smiles and says it is an interesting idea, but warns that Marbus has necromancy power. The man replies that there is no worthy heir left, and Sylvester has grown stronger. After hearing this, Louis agrees and says it is the right time to remove them. The man leaves, promising success. Louis then mocks his father and says he will soon remove this old problem. Standing behind the throne, he says everything will soon belong to him. Meanwhile, in Leon's office, Pullen speaks to Walter, saying common people still do not trust someone like him. Pullen suggests that Walter should wear an artifact for now. He places an amulet around Walter's neck and says they value him as a loyal vassal, but they still have to think about public opinion. After this, Walter's animal ears disappear. He touches his head in surprise, and Pullen asks if he agrees that their lord should not face unnecessary trouble. Walter agrees, and Pullen smiles, saying he is wise. Leon looks at them and says he wants to discuss something important. He folds his hands and says they must swear true loyalty, not just with words. Looking at them coldly, he asks if they are ready to devote themselves only to him. Pullen begins to cry and loudly promises to serve him for life and remain loyal to House Marbus. Leon seems slightly confused by his strong reaction. Crow says he is impressed that Leon has gained such loyalty, and the demon adds that control and loyalty are the house's principles. Walter then says he feels the same and places his hand on his chest, but Leon says those are not his own principles. He explains that instead, they will form a contract sealed with mana. He says if they refuse, it means they are not truly loyal. Walter asks what that means. Leon explains that such a contract binds both sides by their mana and links their fates together forever. Then he stands up and says it is time to begin. A hole opens in the floor, and dark energy rises from it. Two hands come out holding a scroll and open it before them. Marbus reveals its true form and speaks, saying it will witness this bond. Walter and Pullen watch in fear as Leon's power grows stronger, and the demon declares that the Lord of the Undead has returned. Smoke comes out of Marbus's mouth, and everyone looks at him in shock. Leon decides there has been enough drama and says they are his loyal followers, asking the demon to treat them with respect. The lion opens his eyes and agrees, warning them that breaking the pact will cost them their souls and betrayal will not be forgiven. Pullen bows and says he will never betray him. He wonders if this is truly the same demon the founder has made a deal with. Dark energy surrounds Leon, and the others understand where his power comes from. Walter feels strong mana and his hand trembles, as his kind is very sensitive to it. He looks at Leon and wonders who he really is. Suddenly, the demon turns into a small kitten and sits on the floor. Walter is surprised and calls it cute, then quickly covers his mouth. Marbus asks what he said, and Pullen explains he is only amazed by its form. Marbus warns them not to reveal his existence, saying only those he chooses can see him. He then reminds them that others are interested in Kirchel, and Pullen confirms it. He explains that the owner has received a letter meant for the master. Marbus jumps onto Leon's shoulder and says this is their next goal. Leon asks where the letter is, and Crow says he knows. The doppelganger brings a chest full of treasure. Marbus complains about greed. Leon looks inside and finds an open letter among the gems. He takes it out and says, "It is important." Marbus says even this creature can be useful. Leon reads the letter, which declares that House Sylvester is starting a war and demands surrender, or Marbus will be taken over. The sorcerer looks down at the letter and reads that they must prove their innocence in a fair battle. The others react in fear. Leon narrows his eyes and says they have 1 month. Marbus asks if that is not enough, but Leon replies that time does not matter to him. He says he has an interesting idea. Holding the letter, he explains that now he can control the dead with his thoughts, giving him many new possibilities. Crow steps forward, and the doppelganger listens closely. Leon smiles and says he has a special task for him. At the same time, a knight reports that the message of war has been delivered. The commander says Kirchel acts weak and desperate. Alan laughs and thinks his enemy is in panic. He says Kirchel should stay alive for now. He then asks about the rightful heir. The knight replies there is no news. Alan is pleased and says a young boy cannot change anything. He then explains that the worst fate is facing an enemy so strong that there is no chance to win. In such a case, people can only watch everything fall apart. He says such power comes from natural talent that frightens others. The commander wonders if the boy can have such talent, but Alan says they cannot ignore the possibility. Meanwhile, Leon stands in front of his double and smiles, noting how well it copies his voice. The doppelganger looks pleased. Marbus grins as the copy says it can offer more than just magic. Leon strikes it, but its skin heals at once. Marbus grows angry. Walter watches in confusion as the monster attacks again. The boy asks if it is always so noisy, and Pullen tells him to stay quiet if he wants to live. The boy takes a scabbard from the wall and says it is time to begin their preparation. He hands a sword to his comrade. The necromancer raises his eyebrows and asks him to show his abilities during this month. Walter holds the weapon and understands that he will be useless if he does not use his skills. The mage agrees and says there is no value in a subordinate who can die easily. The boy holds the scabbard tightly. Walter speaks with confidence and says he is ready to face any challenge to earn his place beside his master. He then asks if one wish can be granted if he succeeds. The sorcerer smiles and agrees. Pullen coughs and says they need proper training, as his abilities will show if he trains with skilled knights. Marbus jumps onto Leon's shoulder and says it is time for them to train as well. He reminds them that Leon has not reached his full strength. Leon agrees and walks out. Sunlight fills the estate through the windows. On the training ground, swords clash as Walter fights another soldier. He uses magic, and a skeleton appears to attack him. Walter's eyes shine as he fights and cuts off its head. He lowers his weapon, breathing heavily, and drops to one knee. Leon stands in front of him and calls him the vanguard of his army. Walter smiles with pride. A month later, everyone gathers as the war begins. A rider comes to the fortress and delivers a message from the enemy. Alan shouts angrily that they refuse to surrender and will cause their own destruction. Leon looks down and says the war has started. Pullen says the enemy has no honor. Marbus smirks and says their anger shows fear. The man frowns, knowing House Sylvester has the advantage, with a large army behind them. Kirchel stands beside the mage, while the lion reminds everyone that they have already uncovered the enemy's plan. The servant turns his head and asks if they mean the dead duke. Covering his mouth, he realizes that if the duke is still alive, their house would surrender quickly, and he wonders if his death has shaken the enemy. Marbus rests its paws on Leon's shoulder and says humans are fragile. The nobleman strokes his beard while the demon explains that even small changes can cause confusion, and once doubt appears, even strong warriors can hesitate. Pullen frowns and says that even weak hands can still fight in large numbers. Marbus smiles and says his contractor will defeat the entire army. Leon looks forward calmly. Marbus tells them not to worry and says their young master is stronger than he seems. Leon smiles with confidence, and Pullen is surprised. Marbus thinks his master's talent is indeed incredible. Leon closes his eyes and focuses. Powerful energy surrounds him, and nearby crystals begin to glow. The symbol on the demon's forehead lights up, and Marbus strikes the ground. The undead growl and rush forward, attacking fiercely. Leon sits still with closed eyes as his summoned creatures fight and strike hard. Marbus watches and is surprised that Leon has learned to control his power so quickly. Even if the undead are weak, he wonders if Leon can already sense mana without seeing. Marbus agrees his talent is deep. Crow says he reminds him of the founder. Marbus says he can one day drown the continent in blood and gain anything he wants. The doppelganger asks if he can at least get many peanuts. Marbus tells him to think bigger and shows a magical watch, saying it holds the power to reverse time. Leon then opens his eyes, stands up, and asks what training they will do next. The bones of the undead lie scattered on the ground. Standing among them, Leon says it is time to move to the next test. The lion turns his head and says they should go first. Soon, they appear inside an office. Marbus frowns and asks how much Leon knows about dark magic. Leon looks confused and says he has studied it as part of basic training. The beast thinks about Kerchal's weak use of it and tells him to forget such poor examples. Leon touches his chin and says that everything depends on the person. Thinking of the founder Wellen, he adds that someone who conquers the eastern continent so quickly cannot have relied only on the dead. Crow agrees, and the doppelganger creates a light in his hand, explaining that necromancy is only one part of dark magic, and real power depends on mana and skill. Pullen praises the founder and his followers, but Marbus says he is not a follower, as he and the founder have fought as equals. Leon says he respects such loyalty, though the demon thinks he is joking. The double asks who would fear a small kitten. Leon tells them to stop arguing and asks his copy to show him useful spells. Marbus stops him and says there is one condition first. Leon looks puzzled. The beast explains that he must take a risk and enter his own mind. Leon asks what that means, and the demon says his mind holds a large source of power. He adds that once Leon controls it, war will seem easy. Marbus says dark magic needs strong mana, and Leon agrees. The beast then says he senses power in Leon equal to, or greater than, his ancestor. Leon places his hand on his chest and says he is ready to take the risk to restore his family's glory. Looking at him, the demon warns that this method is dangerous and not fully safe, but it is the only fast way to unlock hidden mana. Leon narrows his eyes and asks what he needs to do. Marbus smiles and remembers the strange light in Leon's eyes, which once holds only desire. A symbol glows on the demon's forehead as he explains that Leon must push his mana to its limit. A dark mist forms behind Leon as his energy begins to rise quickly. Marbus says that his hidden mind and potential will guide him. Leon agrees and focuses. A strong desire for power burns inside him, pushing him forward. Dark flames rise around him. Leon holds his head, feeling overwhelmed, and says it should be enough. Pullen rushes forward in panic when Leon loses consciousness, grabbing him and shouting. Marbus pushes him away and tells him to trust their master. Pullen cries, saying Leon is still a child. Crow calmly says their master might be the most talented of all, and the demon agrees. Leon lies still with his eyes closed. Marbus believes he will succeed, as his potential rivals Wellen. Pullen tries to stay strong. Walter runs in and shouts that he has finished his task, but freezes in fear when he sees Leon unconscious. He sits beside him and begins to cry. The others tell him to calm down, believing Leon will overcome this. Marbus watches and thinks humans are always the same, wondering how such talent has been hidden for so long. Leon's body lies still as his mind enters darkness. Inside his subconscious, he finds himself in a ruined city. Suddenly, his father appears and says he knows Leon will come. Leon is shocked. His father turns and suggests they walk, saying they have much to discuss, leaving Leon confused. Ruins are spread everywhere. Leon walks up the stairs in the square and follows his father. The former head stops and, without turning, says Leon has come to awaken the power sleeping inside him. Leon agrees and says he does not come just to talk. He explains that he now has loyal people depending on him, so he has to succeed. His father smiles and says he is fortunate. Turning to him, Rune says he is only a memory, an echo of magic after dying at Alan's hands. Leon frowns and says he understands. Rune narrows his eyes and says, it is not about fate, but lack of potential, though it no longer matters. He says he can still help him. He recalls how he fails to use the Necronomicon and cannot gain Marbus's support. With regret, he says he has to take another path. He places a hand on Leon's shoulder and explains he creates a method to absorb ancestral mana into his own, though control will be limited. Leon remembers being warned that using another's mana is dangerous. Rune says such power can break the mind, since mana belongs to its owner. Still, he calls Leon an exception and tells him to think of himself as a blank slate. He explains that their ancestor Wellen has pure dark mana, and Leon has inherited that same rare gift. A glowing sphere forms in his hand, shining brightly as the ruins tremble and dark energy spreads. Rune tells Leon to remember this moment. Then he smiles and says their time is ending. A large sphere of power appears above them. Leon asks if they will meet again, and Rune says yes, as he still has more to teach. He places the energy into Leon's chest, and Leon feels a power greater than anything before. A dark mist forms behind Leon as a bright light bursts from the amulet on his chest. Rune frowns and explains that this artifact is called Greed, and it can absorb everything instantly. He holds the pendant and tells Leon never to forget it. Leon lowers his eyes and promises. The ground begins to crack. Rune says they will meet again when Leon's heart truly wishes for it. Leon bows and says he hopes that day will come soon. Then Rune disappears. The nobleman lowers his head and thinks that if fate allows, his sun will shine like a rising star never seen before. Debris falls around him as he feels sad he will not witness it. He also wonders if this power will lead Leon to greatness or destruction, fearing the worst. Meanwhile, Leon lies unconscious in bed while the others stand around him. Pullen worries if he will wake up and fears the consequences. Marbus tells him to stop doubting, saying if Leon fails such a simple test, they will meet again sooner than expected. Walter agrees and says they should trust him. Crow becomes annoyed at Pullen for panicking. Dark energy begins to gather around Leon, and Marbus understands that he is returning. Marbus says Leon will come back soon and warns them to be ready, as he will not be the same child. Suddenly, Leon opens his eyes. Everyone looks at him in shock. He asks the demon to move because he cannot breathe, but the lion refuses. At the same time, Walter trains hard, using lightning power, while Leon commands his undead soldiers. Days pass, and the sun shines over Sylvester Castle as war approaches. Alan stands up and says the time has come. Soldiers gather, and he declares they will erase the Marbus family and create a new history, calling everyone to follow him. The Raven's red eyes shine as the army moves through a foggy cemetery. One man strokes his beard and says they should look for a weak point in the enemy's formation. Alan agrees and praises him. The leader says it is the least he can do. Holding his horse's reins, he says he is still surprised that the Marbus family is not protecting their ancestors' graves more carefully. The Duke replies that they are necromancers, not strategists, and likely do not want to damage the graves. The Count laughs and says their past glory is already gone. Kirchel agrees. When asked for his thoughts, he says nothing and tells them to keep moving. Soon they leave the cemetery. The leader looks ahead and sees enemy soldiers approaching. Leon and Walter ride forward to meet them. Leon smiles and says he is glad the enemy keeps his word. Alan says he comes to see their weakness and is met by only a small group. He draws his sword and attacks. In an instant, the Duke's head is cut off and falls to the ground, but dark mist rises and his body does not fall. Purple energy surrounds him, and a new head forms. The enemy is shocked and asks how this is possible. The two sides face each other. Alan shouts in anger and says, "They will pay for this." A large army stands behind him. He mocks Leon for bringing so few soldiers. Leon calmly says that to insult him, his enemy must first be a threat. This angers Alan. Leon raises his hand and says he has a reason to accept this fight. Dark energy spreads across the ground, forming a black pool. Suddenly, the dead rise from it. The enemy stares in horror, and Leon confirms that it is necromancy. The undead rush forward to attack. The sorcerer notices that the enemy sounds shocked to face them while fighting House Marbas. The Count holds his horse tightly. He remembers asking what the worst fate for a person is, and the answer is facing an enemy with no chance of winning. On the battlefield, skeleton warriors appear and attack. Alan thinks about the founder and reminds himself to always consider the odds. The undead charge and kill enemy soldiers. One knight strikes them, but Leon raises his hand and sends more forward. The enemy commander believes Leon is only a child and not ready for a real battle. He pushes through the undead to reach him, but Walter steps in to stop him. They clash swords, and the captain pushes Walter back. Walter stands firm and says it is his duty to protect his master. He smiles with confidence. Meanwhile, skeleton warriors fight across the field. The Count orders his mages to attack. They summon lightning, and powerful energy strikes the undead. The enemy army pushes forward, and Leon watches calmly. Alan leads his troops and says he is ruthless and does not care about family. Leon says he is not interested in such matters. Dark energy forms around his hand. Alan claims Leon lacks courage and swings his sword, saying he will die alone. Blood stains his blade. Leon holds his book and says his enemy is wrong. He reaches toward it, and the red eye on its cover glows. Power surrounds him as he opens it. Looking calmly at Alan, Leon says he is not seeking revenge and that his enemy is not strong enough to kill him. A few days earlier, there is a camp set up in the field. The group sits around a table while Leon looks down in thought. Marbus calmly licks his paw. Marbus frowns and says he has seen many risky plans, but this one seems especially dangerous. Marbus turns to Leon and says that choosing this place for their operation is actually a smart decision. Leon replies that there is no better option. He explains that being too careful can lead to missing the best chance right in front of them. Crow agrees with him. Walter looks surprised when the doppelganger jokingly asks if a small creature like him should give advice. Walter scratches his chin and says he trusts Leon's plan but also respects caution. Marbus lies down and says no one really cares about his opinion anyway. Pullen promises to gather all possible forces, saying he will not leave his lord alone in battle. Leon closes his eyes and says, "It is time to begin." As they prepare to leave the tent, he asks one question. Holding the amulet, he asks if there are any side effects. Marbus replies that its price can be death. The doppelganger says he is being too negative, but Marbus explains the power inside it is like poison and hard to control. Leon says he still needs it. Marbus tells him its purpose will become clear later. Dark energy surrounds Leon, and the demon says his power is already enough for now, though his true potential has not fully developed. He warns that followers can turn against him, as has happened before, and asks why he trusts them. Leon stays silent. Dark energy rises from his book, forming shapes on the ground. Across from him, Alan watches closely and asks if Leon truly believes he cannot be defeated. The mage's yellow eyes begin to glow, and the man looks at him in fear. A cloud of purple smoke forms in front of him. The Count realizes that this is a power of deep darkness. Leon raises his hand, and the nobleman notices how carefully and skillfully he uses his magic, wondering where he has learned it. Leon looks ahead and calls upon the loyal dead of his family to rise and serve him. The Count feels danger and knows he has to stop this spell, but it is too late. Alan orders his soldiers to attack. Leon declares himself the true heir and commands the dead to fight under his banner. Dozens of undead rise from the ground, their red eyes glowing as they rush forward. The enemy is filled with fear as a massive army of skeletons appears. From afar, Marbus watches and says Leon is as wild as his ancestor. The amulet on Leon's chest shines brightly. The undead attack fiercely, smashing through enemy lines. Some use weapons, while others cast dark magic, sending powerful energy through the nights. The Count realizes they have been trapped in the cemetery. As he fights, he shouts that they are facing an entire army of the dead. Fear spreads among his men. Leon begins to weaken, holding his chest and coughing blood. The Count tells him to stop and promises to spare him, but Leon refuses calmly. Marbus once warns him not to take risks before reaching full power, but Leon chooses to act now. The enemy army begins to fall apart. Dust fills the air. Alan is shocked as Leon steps forward. The Count drops to his knees, his eyes wide with fear, while Leon stands over him and looks down. Dark clouds fill the sky, and rain begins to fall. Behind Leon stands his army of the dead, while behind the nobleman are his fallen soldiers. The nobleman looks down and asks if Leon is not seeking revenge. Leon lowers his head and says, "That is true." The man grabs Leon's robe and begs for mercy, promising that his house will never oppose Marbus again and that the Empire will never learn of his power. Leon looks at him coldly and asks when they have become close enough for such a request. The man says, "Revenge will only continue hatred." Leon looks at him with contempt. The nobleman shouts that he only acts for his house and its survival, saying he has no choice. Leon thinks there is some truth in that, but still sees no reason to spare him. Alan asks what he means. Leon takes his sword and calmly says this is not personal, but a decision based on what benefits his house. He then says goodbye and cuts off the man's head. Blood spills as the body falls. The undead fade away. Leon sighs and collapses from exhaustion. Walter rushes to him, but Marbus says it is only mana depletion. Marbus believes Leon's talent matches his ancestors. Marbus wonders if he can control such power and thinks a dangerous force is growing inside him. He smiles, calling it a risky exchange for his entire being. Nearby, Alan's sword lies on the ground. Marbus says they should continue. Marbus notices a strange sign on the fallen man and realizes demons are becoming more active. Soon, Leon's allies gather around him as he wakes. Pullen feels relieved and apologizes for failing him. Marbus tells him to calm down. Crow crosses his arms and complains that the demon shows no empathy. Marbus warns him not to insult him again. Leon stands up from the bed and says he is fine, praising his comrades for their work. Walter says that House Sylvester is close to collapse after losing its leader and that another attack is unlikely soon. Pullen agrees and says that under Leon's leadership, their house will recover. However, he soon looks worried. Leon asks what is wrong. Pullen hesitates, but then admits their house is nearly ruined and deeply in debt. Leon is shocked and asks how that happens. Marbus suggests forcing Sylvester to pay reparations, but Pullen explains that the imperial family has forbidden it. He says this is because their house, along with others like Lienhaber and Sader, belongs to dark forces, so the Empire wants to keep them weak. Leon understands that they will likely refuse any help. Marbus is angered by this. Leon asks about the amount, first guessing 5,000, then 50,000, but Pullen finally reveals it is 500,000 gold. Leon is stunned and imagines how impossible it is to repay. Meanwhile, Richel arrives in Marbus lands and is greeted by a woman named Carleen. He says their debt to her has already been paid, but she explains she is not there for that and tells him not to worry. The young master apologizes, saying he still feels uneasy after dealing with debt collectors. She jokes that people should always read the fine print. Another man suggests ending the conversation, and the wizard moves forward, realizing they have come to meet someone important. Pullen stands near Leon's bed and reveals the full amount of their debt. Sweat runs down his face, and Leon looks shocked. Suddenly, someone knocks on the door. Pullen goes to check, while Leon feels uneasy. The servant returns and says 2 guests have arrived. Leon becomes cautious. Soon, the guests sit at the table. Richel calmly drinks tea and thanks them for their hospitality, while Carleen introduces herself. Leon greets them, though the room feels tense. Walter quietly wonders if meeting them is safe, and even the demon feels unsure. Crow, however, says their master is strong enough. Carleen says they have heard about Leon's victory in the war and congratulates him, then mentions his debt. Pullen whispers that their family's poor standing has made things worse. Leon asks how much they need to pay. Pullen says most of the debt is owed to Carleen, who leads a powerful group. Leon realizes these are dangerous people and remembers that debtors who fail to pay can be sold for experiments. Carleen notices his understanding and says they should get straight to the point. She takes out a document and demands at least 10% of the debt immediately, reminding him of the high yearly interest. Leon grows tense, thinking about the huge amount and how it keeps increasing. He asks who has signed such a contract, and Pullen says it is his father. Leon imagines this and closes his eyes. Richel tries to ease the situation, asking Carleen not to push too hard. She smirks and says Leon likely does not have the money. When Richel speaks again, she warns him not to interfere and hints at serious consequences. Leon stands up and says he understands everything. The young master walks toward the door and says he will return later. The girl complains that the tea is wasted. Leon looks down, worried, unsure what to say. As he tries to speak, the woman stops him and warns him not to ask for more time or say he has no money. She leans forward and says she has heard the same excuses from his father many times. The boy quietly wonders if they should kill her, but Marbus quickly tells him not to think about it. Marbus warns that she is too dangerous and can kill him instantly. Leon frowns, while Crow says they will become beggars at this rate. Pullen lowers his head and says the late rune has only meant well. Walter clenches his fist and says they will find a solution, trusting Leon's intelligence. Leon then speaks and asks Carleen to show them mercy. She looks surprised, and everyone stares in shock. Walter awkwardly wonders what this means. Meanwhile, in the hallway, Richel stands near a portrait and thinks meeting Leon is worth it. He remembers sensing Leon's great mana and thinks of inviting him to the academy. Using magic, he contacts someone through a crystal and asks if they have extra gold, but the answer is unclear. Back in the room, Carleen mocks Leon, asking if he thinks her group is weak. She snaps her fingers, breaking his cup, and says they are far more serious than he thinks. Tea spills everywhere. Walter draws his sword and demands respect, but she warns that those who do not pay will face consequences. Leon calmly says they have no gold and their treasury is empty. Carleen stands up, surrounded by flames, and prepares to act. Just then, Richel rushes in and tells her to stop. Everyone turns to him, and Leon looks at him seriously. The young master steps forward and raises his hand in front of the moneylender, telling her not to even think about harming someone who can become a great talent of Aramina. The mage looks confused, while Walter stares in shock. He closes his eyes and says it seems the young master already has a plan. Leon narrows his eyes and asks what this means, while the gang leader frowns with annoyance. The head of the academy walks closer, and the woman sighs. Leon's eyes become serious as he tells his people to leave so they can talk in private. Sitting with the guests, he asks if the academy will really pay 10% of his debt if he officially joins them. The young master looks at him, and the mage calmly confirms it. Richel places his cup down and adds that Leon has used necromancy in the recent war with Sylvester. Leon frowns and asks how he knows, and Richel says they cannot have won otherwise. The moneylender drinks her tea as the academy leader says she likely believes the same, which is why she comes. She smirks and admits it, saying she comes because she thinks the family has regained its power. Leon asks if she truly believes they can pay the debt now, and she says she has thought so at first, but not anymore, suggesting they delay the matter. Marbus guesses she only wants the interest to grow. Leon realizes one guest wants to hire him, while the other wants payment. He says they are too confident, as his power might not fully return. He adds that others can help, but she says that will cost money. The mage doubts money alone can win the war, while Richel says that is why necromancy matters. The woman smiles, saying even a small part of that power makes him a good investment. Leon says the debt will still remain, and she agrees, reminding him debts are serious. She pulls out a revolver and points it at him, but Richel asks to speak to Leon alone. She agrees and leaves the room, warning that collecting the debt is her priority. The young master smiles and says they have just managed to get out of trouble. Leon narrows his eyes and says he still does not trust him. A strong aura surrounds the academy founder, and Leon realizes he is not human. The wizard smirks and says the same can be said about Leon. The boy points at Marbus and understands that Leon has made a deal with one of the 72 demons. Marbus smiles, surprised that someone can see him without a contract. His fur stands up as he shows his true form and asks who the guest really is. Suddenly, horns appear on the visitor's head, and a tail grows behind him. The founder calmly folds his hands. Marbus widens his eyes and says he is a dragon, even though they are thought to be gone after the anti-magic war. Leon looks confused, and Marbus says the horns and tail make it obvious. The wizard asks why a demon has approached Leon. Energy moves around him as he says it might be connected to the first chapter. Leon tells him not to worry and explains that Marbus is different from other demons and supports humans. Marbus agrees and says he does not share his kind's views. The boy says he has no reason to interfere in human matters. Leon then asks what is expected from him besides joining the academy. The founder explains that the academy trains magic users and will pay for his membership, while Leon must become stronger. Leon asks if that is all, but Marbus does not believe him. The wizard admits there is more. He says students cannot join other schools. Then he reveals that other schools exist, one of which worships demons, and their goal is to bring back the Demon Lord Baal, the first great battle. A winged monster surrounds everyone. Solomon stands with his staff, and it is in that war that the king finally died. He holds his weapon tightly as golden light spreads across the ground. Chains appear under the demon's feet and lock the enemies in place. The monsters roar in anger as dark energy covers them. The Necronomicon opens, and Wellin raises it high before closing it with force. The Necromancer looks forward with a serious face as the winged creatures fall. Later, Richel explains that during that battle, the king has sealed a being called Baal. A small mass of energy forms in his hand as he says the seal has weakened over time. The chains fade away, and he warns that the demon can awaken at any moment. Leon raises his eyebrows and asks if the king has been foolish. He remembers the King Solomon and realizes who they mean. The academy founder confirms it and says demons always find a way back. Marbus smirks, thinking Leon already knows this. Leon imagines the war and understands that many different races have died. He asks if that is why he is not allowed to join other schools, and the dragon says yes, adding that he will learn more at Aramina. Marbus reminds him that all of this needs money, and Richel agrees they cannot solve their financial problems forever. Leon asks how to earn money, thinking about the huge debt. The founder says there is a way through the Adventurers Guild, where he can earn gold for each mission. As they speak, Carlene appears at the door, showing she has been listening. Richel asks for her help, and she walks in. Leon stands up and introduces her to the demon. Marbus smiles with satisfaction, while the gang leader holds her head and complains that every meeting with them brings trouble. The academy founder calmly closes his eyes. As they walk through the forest, the woman stays annoyed, saying she does not want to come, but the founder says she has to if she wants her debt repaid. Leon, with Marbus on his shoulder, asks what an adventurer's guild is. Marbus says he is curious too, as it does not exist before. The woman explains that it is a place where people take on different tasks. She adds that groups can accept missions together and share the rewards. She warns that people can also work alone, but weak ones often die quickly. One of them says it is like a trap for the careless. The founder explains that the guild is neither good nor bad. He adds that with the right support, people can find jobs as knights or mages even in other lands, making it a useful path for skilled individuals. Leon then asks about ranks. The woman explains there are 5 levels: copper, silver, gold, platinum, and titanium. Each rank gives access to better paying missions. Leon thinks the highest rank will be best for earning money, but she warns it is almost impossible to reach. Only a few people have titanium rank, and their jobs pay huge amounts. As they continue, they reach a fortress city. At the gate, she gives a note to a guard and tells Leon he should start with a copper badge, as it is hard for newcomers to rise quickly. Inside the city, they enter a tavern with a beer sign. The founder suggests starting with a simple test. Leon looks around in surprise, realizing this is the guild. People fill the hall, and a woman holding a cup notices them, thinking troublesome clients have arrived. The group walks through the hall one by one. People around them whisper and look at Carlene. Some men sitting at a table say it looks like her and complain that she watches people like she wants their money. Others wonder why she is here and why the head of a magic school is with her. One man drinks his beer and says, "Even it tastes bad now," calling the world unfair. Rachel smiles, while the academy leader calmly says, "It seems everyone dislikes them." Carlene tells them to stop talking and move faster, saying they should ignore such people. Leon follows her and asks where the person they are looking for is. He says he cannot feel any strong presence here, but Marbus disagrees and asks if he really cannot sense the mana around them. Suddenly, Leon closes his eyes and begins to feel it. At that moment, a girl with a sword attacks him. As she draws her weapon, Carlene quickly grabs her gun. Marbus jumps into the air, surprising everyone. Leon's eyes begin to glow as he holds his weapon ready. Carlene notices the girl has become more aggressive since they last meet. The girl warns them not to call her name so easily. Leon steps forward and asks if she is the strongest here. She sheathes her sword and says she has never promised him anything, then asks who he is. Marbus thinks she is very powerful. Leon introduces himself as the head of House Marbus. Walter stands near the door. The girl holding a cup says she has heard rumors about the new head and is surprised to see someone so young. Leon rests his hand on his knee as Carlene says his magical power is very strong and she can confirm it. The guild leader replies that it is strange to see a noble like him in such a place. The academy founder says he has no choice. The girl also finds it strange that he is traveling with a demon and says Carlene's companions keep getting more unusual. Marbus raises his paw and demands an apology, but someone jokes that even the demon sounds sensible, which makes him angry. Leon calmly says he has his reasons because he has debts to repay, and that is why he comes to find work. Carlene says the guild is useful because people can work anonymously. The guild leader says she can give him a chance, but warns that missions are dangerous and can lead to death. Leon answers that death is normal for his family and that failing to repay his debt will be worse. She agrees and prepares a test. She pours out her drink, and magic symbols appear on the floor. Marbus says it is advanced teleportation magic, showing her great skill. Suddenly, they are moved to another room with many stone knights. The guild leader explains the test is simple. One statue is real and holds mana, and he has to find it within 30 minutes. She asks if he is ready, and he agrees. Carlene summons a large hourglass to begin the test. Leon walks between the statues. The guild leader warns they are not ordinary. Suddenly, the stone knights move and attack him, and she tells him to get ready to fight. A mark of a sword swing stays in the air as Leon is thrown back by a strong hit, and pieces of stone fly everywhere. He quickly turns and bends his body to avoid another attack from behind. Carlene becomes tense, and Rachel asks if the test is too hard, saying even skilled mages would struggle. She agrees Leon is talented but still very young, and says he has likely seen how harsh the world is for the weak. Marbus watches and thinks the statues are not very strong, but finding the real golem among them is very difficult. The stone knights attack from all sides, and Leon begins to sweat as he focuses. Raleigh also thinks letting such a young boy join might be too risky. Suddenly, Leon pushes off the ground and moves behind one of the statues. His eyes start to glow, and magic gathers in his hands. Through the helmet of one statue, a glowing eye can be seen. Dark energy spreads behind Leon, and all the statues suddenly stop moving. He believes this is the best way to deal with them. Marbus is shocked, while Leon says he remembers that he will not always have strong spells, so he needs to use what he has. He then creates sharp blades and spears of dark energy. His companions watch in surprise as the weapons fly forward and destroy all the stone knights. Broken pieces fall to the ground. Marbus is amazed, and the guild leader says his control and power are impressive. However, Carlene reminds them that the real goal is to find the one statue with mana, and she believes he has failed the test. Richel smiles and says there is only one way to pass the test. Leon's eyes begin to glow as he focuses. Closing his eyes, he calls out to the spirits of the underworld and asks them to hear the voice of a true descendant of the Marbus family. Dark magic gathers under his feet, forming a swirling force. Then he looks at the broken stone pieces and orders the golem to rise again. The ground shakes as the fragments slowly come together. Rally's eyes widen, and Carlene grows tense. Richel smiles, realizing Leon has planned this from the start. Soon, a full golem stands in the center of the room. Richel explains that mana is like life, so anything without it can be treated as dead and then brought back using necromancy. Carlene is shocked and wonders how anyone can think of such a method. She admits Leon is an exceptional mage. The golem's eyes light up, and she adds that not only is his mana strong, but he uses it in a very clever way. Rally steps forward and asks how he has done it. Leon calmly says he has destroyed them all and then raised the one that is truly alive. She asks how he knows it is alive, and he explains that golems with mana are considered living. He points at the standing golem and says it is the real one. At that moment, the last grains of sand fall in the hourglass. Leon asks if he has passed. Rally says he has and gives him a silver badge, saying bronze is too low for him. Carlene is surprised, and Richel says he has learned a lot. Marbus says it is expected, but someone mocks him, asking what use such a creature is. Leon stays silent. A man slowly comes out of the wall, and Walter looks at him in confusion while thinking about golems. A large stone giant appears in the center of the room, and he remembers that many golems come from magic, but sometimes a real living being with a core can also become one. He realizes that Leon uses this idea to find the real golem among the others. Leon stays calm, and Walter feels sure his master can handle it. Rally admits that this situation is very unusual and says Leon has shown everything needed to pass. He thanks her and then asks how much a silver badge mission usually pays. Marbus thinks he is very focused on money. Richel jokes that he has not even greeted them, while Carlene says missions usually pay around 300 gold. She adds that compared to his debt, he should aim for a gold badge quickly. Leon feels pressure from this. Richel says it is a good start and notes that it usually takes years to earn such a rank. Rally says she will give him his first mission the next day and tells him to rest for now. Leon thanks her. She then waves her hand, and the broken stone pieces come back together, restoring the golems. More statues stand behind them, and Walter is amazed at her control. He says her mana and control are incredible. Richel says they should take a break. Later, Rally sits alone and thinks about Leon's test. She remembers how he uses a unique method to succeed, and notices he has hidden some of his power. Looking out at the moon, she thinks the Marbus family has always lived between life and death, and now they have gained someone dangerous. Rally leans on the balcony and watches Leon, unsure what he is thinking. Later, the group sits together as she holds a scroll and says this is the first mission for a silver-ranked member. She hands it over, and Leon reads that he has to find and capture the Pope of Arden Sect. She explains that the target is in Celishi, a city south of the capital, and rumors about his corruption have already spread. She tells Leon to complete the task carefully, and he will earn 100 gold. Carlene wonders if the mission is too hard for a beginner, but Rally says his abilities are enough. Richel asks if the mission will be dangerous, then says it does not matter since it offers growth. Leon agrees and promises to try his best. Rally warns that failure will lower his rank to bronze, and Leon accepts this. She adds that the others can help him, but Carlene refuses at first. Richel happily agrees to assist, saying it is an honor to watch Leon's abilities. Leon thanks them both and says his father teaches him to accept help with gratitude. Carlene is surprised, while Marbus says controlling people is natural for demons. Walter reminds him Leon is human. Leon then promises he will not fail because they need the money. Elsewhere, inside a large temple, two girls kneel before a cup while a priest watches. He asks for forgiveness and thinks about how only one of them can become a chosen divine maiden. He believes the other must disappear so they can become one. As the liquid in the cup moves, the girl's eyes begin to glow, and the priest understands that one of them will have to die. A vision shows a fair-haired girl and explains that faith on the continent is divided into two sides. One side follows the winged goddess Arden, who creates the world and the philosopher's stone. Her followers worship her statue in temples, and the Arden Church believes she gives divine power to chosen people called holy maidens, who are respected across the land for their miracles. The other side follows a dark belief that worships the devil and his army of 72 demons, including Baal. This group forms a dangerous cult that seeks to bring the devil back to life. Most people support Arden, except for a few outsiders. Later, Leon and his companions travel in a carriage. The driver asks if they want to go to Selashi, but warns it is dangerous because of religious conflict, and even pilgrims avoid it. Richel says the reason for going is complicated, while Carlene shows a bag of gold coins, making it clear they will pay. The driver hesitates, but agrees after seeing the money. Soon, they arrive at Selashi, a damaged city affected by religious struggles. People gather around priests, hoping for help, but the new cardinal has failed to protect them. The driver thinks the problems are caused by holy power and the disappearance of a saint who once performs miracles, which weakens people's faith. Inside the carriage, Leon says their mission is to expose Archbishop Cadon's corruption. Walter says this alone sounds difficult, but Marbus says he does not care about such matters. Leon calmly strokes the demon, as it says these problems mean little compared to his strength. Richel, however, admits that humans have grown much stronger over time, so the situation might not be simple. The mark on the assistant's forehead shines when the mage says they might not be strong enough to defeat the enemy, but they should not take them lightly. Carlene crosses her arms and agrees, saying they come for a priest's soul. And almost everyone on the continent follows Arden's faith. She adds that the faith is already weak after the holy maidens disappear. Richel explains that holy maidens always come from priest families, so the situation is unusual. Leon says the problem is worse this time because the priest has twins instead of one child, and only one can inherit divine power. His eyes glow as he confirms this. Walter asks if the power can be shared, but Marbus says such power can never be divided. Leon stays silent while someone says one daughter will likely die. Richel thinks Leon is hard to understand. Soon the carriage stops, and the driver says they have reached Selashi, the religious center. Inside, a servant informs Archbishop Cadon that guild members have accepted the request. Cadon asks if they are spies, but the servant assures him they are not and says secrecy is important. He adds that this plan is needed to save his daughter. Leon and his group enter the city, where the butler welcomes them and introduces himself as the Archbishop's chief assistant. Richel asks if they have requested an investigation, and the man confirms it, though he is surprised by who comes. Leon says he is assigned. The butler worries Leon is too young and reminds them to keep everything secret. Leon shows his silver badge. The man is shocked. Leon then asks if the priest's missing daughters have gone against his will. The man freezes in silence as the figures of two girls appear behind him. He then says they should speak in private because the story is long. The basement is shown, where the group sits at a table facing the church ministers. The assistant of the Holy Father feels worried about how much their power has fallen. He looks at Leon and thinks sending such a young boy is strange. Leon calmly tells him to forget his doubts before they begin. He says he hopes the servant understands him. The man becomes nervous, feeling as if Leon can read his thoughts. He remembers that such abilities belong to advanced mages. Leon says there is no need to hide anything, since everyone knows the request comes directly from the Archbishop. He then asks him to tell the full truth. Realizing he cannot deceive him, the servant agrees to explain. The group listens carefully. The Archbishop watches his daughters and becomes shocked. In the reflection of water, the two girls appear unclear, and he believes only one can become the holy maiden chosen by divine will. As their reflections move closer, he understands that one will have to disappear. Their images merge, and he realizes one must die for the power to be complete. The girl's eyes shine brightly. Later, the Archbishop and his assistant stand near a window as glowing energy appears in the girls' chests. He asks if the prophecy is real. The servant sadly confirms that the divine power is split between the twins and can only be fully used if one dies. The Archbishop angrily refuses to accept choosing one daughter's death. At that moment, the door opens and three people enter. A gray-haired young master comes forward and introduces himself as Caliban, commander of the Imperial Knights. Showing an official document, he says the Emperor has given an order. He explains that there cannot be two chosen heirs, and the church must accept this decision. The image of a holy maiden appears as a servant explains that when the twins grow up, one will live as the chosen maiden. The other will be burned alive as a sacrifice to complete the divine power and cleanse a false saint. People in the city cheer as flames surround the girl. Kadon is filled with anger and cannot understand how the emperor, who is also a father, can order this. Caliban calmly says the emperor is a father to all people and accepts this sacrifice with a heavy heart. After this, he turns and leaves with his men. The priest falls to his knees before the statue of the goddess and begs to know why he is being tested like this. He cries, asking why his daughters are taken from him and why one must die. Both girls stand silently with sadness in their eyes. Later, the group sits together as Rachel explains that for many years, no holy maiden has appeared. Since the priest has twins, the divine power is split between them. Glazer confirms this is true and admits he has asked the guild for help to save both girls, even though it goes against the emperor's will. Leon listens quietly, then asks to speak to the twins alone. He stands before them and kneels down, asking if either of them will give their life for the other. Marbus questions his direct approach, but Leon says being polite will only slow things down. He explains that he wants to save both of them, but doing so will bring danger from the emperor, and in the worst case, one might still need to die. His companions are shocked. Leon calmly repeats the question. The twins look at each other with sadness as he watches them, unsure what to say next. Houses burn as Kadon says people give them the grand title of Holy Miracle Maidens, though there is nothing special about it. Through tears, he says he and his daughters have carried a curse since birth. Monsters fly in the sky while people watch in fear. From a balcony, the priest says holy maidens are always needed and asks how they can fight demons without divine light. A soldier warns that followers of Arden should leave because it is dangerous. An angry man calls them demons. Kadon, full of rage, says such people deserve no forgiveness. Later, he remembers the past. A woman, Rhea, says their child becoming a holy maiden is an honor, but he fears she will be used by others. Rhea comforts him and asks to name the child Heaven, hoping people will find peace. Soon after, she dies from the birth, leaving him in sorrow. He believes their tragic fate cannot be avoided and is a test from the goddess. As the girls grow up, one sister bows her head, but the other says she should be the one to disappear because she is born first and stronger. She claims she alone can fulfill their mother's will. The other cries, not wanting to hear such words. Leon listens and says he does not fully understand, then asks if both are ready to give their lives. He says if so, he does not see the problem. Marbus reminds him he needs to save both, not let them die. Leon agrees and says both must survive. One girl promises he will be rewarded, but only asks that their father not be harmed, as he has done nothing wrong. The other sister agrees and says their father has always done his best. Leon says he understands and asks them to explain more about their situation, also confirming that one of them will be burned. The girl quietly says this is true, and it will happen in 2 days. One sister places her hand on her chest and says that if there is no other plan, she will accept the sacrifice herself. The other sister loudly refuses. Leon realizes there is almost no time left, but says he will still try to find a way. Rachel suggests checking the marks that prove they are true maidens. Leon asks to see them, and the girl agrees, saying there are several marks. They ask everyone except Leon and Carlene to leave the room. Carlene insists she will examine the marks and not let others look. After the room clears, one sister removes her clothes, revealing a golden mark on her body. Leon thinks deeply and says the power cannot be moved or shared through magic. Carlene adds that the marks are in a place that makes it hard to show them in front of others. Marbus says there is only one solution, though it will be hard to accept. Leon looks away and says one of them will still have to die. He feels anger at this cruel fate that will destroy both girls. Later, in another place, people prepare for the ceremony, saying the Holy Maiden will soon be revealed after many years. They explain the burning will happen first. Leon appears and questions if it is right to give life to one and death to another. Marbus asks what he means. Leon says one sister is lying. Dark energy forms in his hand as he explains that one truly wants to live, while the other is ready to die. He struggles with this thought, unsure who will live or die, and admits he does not know how to handle such a situation. Many people stand near a large staircase while the prince steps forward. Smiling slightly, Louis spreads his arms and announces that by the emperor's order, he will witness the rise of a new holy maiden. The crowd shouts loudly. Then he raises his hand, and fear spreads among them. He says that today they will face a deep darkness, but it will soon be replaced by light when the miracle maiden appears. A wooden pole is brought out, and he explains that to make this happen, the nameless witch must be burned. He looks at Caliban, who declares that just as there cannot be two suns in the sky, there cannot be two holy maidens chosen by the goddess Arden. He adds that the priest having two daughters is a sign of evil meant to cause chaos. Louis says that, by the emperor's will, the witch must be punished to restore order. He asks if anyone objects, but no one speaks. The twins stand quietly with sadness. Louis approaches them and says it is a pity because one of them is very beautiful, even saying he would have taken her as a concubine if she were not a witch. Cadone clenches his fist in anger. Louis then lightly touches him, and they step aside. The priest asks Leon if there is any hope to save his daughters. Leon, removing his hood, says it is almost impossible, but asks him a question. At the same time, the scene shows the twins alone. One girl cries, while the other calmly says there is no need to cry because she has always believed she should sacrifice herself. Her sister argues that they have done nothing wrong and asks if being born like this is a sin. The other girl simply says the will of the goddess cannot be understood. The girl smiles and says they must follow the goddess's will without hesitation because only then can the prophecy come true. Standing before her sister, she says this choice is easier than the pain they have lived with since birth, and now they at least have some control. Suddenly, Caliban shouts for the witch to be tied and placed on the fire. The girl raises her brows, then walks to the exit and says goodbye to her sister. Tears run down her sister's face. The girl suddenly falls to her knees and says she is sorry, admitting she has not been honest and is thankful she will die instead. Leon stands behind her as dark energy surrounds her, and she collapses. Leon watches seriously, while Marbus asks if this is truly the best plan. Leon answers that it might be the only one, even if it is not truly right. Soon, a girl is tied to a wooden pole, and flames are lit. The fire spreads quickly as Louis declares this is the moment of a true saint's rise, and that doubt must be silenced. Caliban adds that anyone who resists will die. The fire reaches the girl as dawn approaches. From a distance, Leon and his allies watch in confusion. Carlene says she is shocked, and asks if this is the only way. Rachel says it is not perfect, but it is not a failure. Leon replies that the father wants both daughters alive, and he still wishes for both to survive. As the fire burns, he says he cannot fully understand the father's pain, but he wants to save them both, even at great cost. The fire moves closer to the girl as Leon watches with a serious expression, feeling he somehow understands her cold eyes. Through tears, she tells herself everything is fine and that this punishment is just. Closing her eyes, she admits that unlike her sister, she is not pure and fears death more than anything, so she has hidden behind kind words. The flames burn brighter as the prince orders more oil to be poured, and the fire grows stronger. She apologizes to her sister for her weakness. 2 days earlier, Leon asks Cadone which daughter he will save, the one who wants to live or the one ready to die. The priest is surprised Leon understands so quickly, but Leon says he can sense it. After thinking, Cadone says he will save the one who will find peace in death. Back in the present, the fire rages while Leon questions this choice. He asks why the father wants to save the one who chooses death. Marbus explains that the father wants to teach her the true value of life. Leon thinks about this, and Marbus says the one who lives will have to carry both lives, while the one who chooses death will fully understand her sacrifice. He adds that someone who only wants to live will not learn anything. Leon remembers that gratitude fades with time and kindness can be misused. Watching everything, the others feel helpless. Rachel says nothing can be done, and it is clear that the Empire's power controls everything, leaving no way to stop what is happening. Carlene looks to the side while everyone watches the new saint. One sister holds her clothes tightly, and Carlene sighs, saying their job is done and the power should now be complete. But suddenly her eyes widen, and everyone becomes tense. Rachel asks in confusion if the holy power is still split. At that moment, the mark on the girl's body begins to glow again. The holy maiden quickly looks at her father. The prince steps forward and mocks the situation, asking if this is some kind of trick. Caliban raises his hand and says that even though the witch has been burned, the power is still divided, and he orders the arrest of the bishop and his followers. Cadone is shocked and says he does not understand because he has sacrificed the daughter he chooses. The prince grows angry and says he has shown him respect, but will now order his execution. Caliban hesitates, questioning the order, but the prince insists, saying the priest must have hidden the real miracle girl. Cadone denies it, saying he has done exactly what is ordered. The prince replies that if it is true, the holy mark will have united. Caliban then raises his sword to strike. Just as the blade comes down, Kadon's daughter steps in front of him and takes the blow. Blood flows as everyone freezes in shock. She calmly says her sacrifice is not only for her father. She explains that it is better to die for a reason than to live without purpose. She says she has long searched for meaning and chooses to die so her sister can live. She calls this the proper end for her failure. Leon watches in shock as dark energy begins to gather around her burning body and a strange aura appears. Seeing this, he says firmly that it is wrong to punish someone who has done nothing wrong. The man, sweating, asks again what she means by a proper end. The girl standing before him says it also applies to him. He looks confused, but then lowers his eyes. Her clothes are covered in blood as she says he never sees them as daughters, only as tools for the church's power. Through tears, she tells him to face the truth, saying he only cares about himself. The priest's eyes widen in shock as she says he never truly treats them as his children. She falls to the ground, saying this is the right punishment for him and that at least her death might have a meaning. Kadon reaches out and catches her as her body weakens, while the other sister's body continues to burn. Marbus watches in confusion as dark energy gathers around Leon. Taking out his strange book, Leon calls to the two souls taken by death and asks them to listen. Carlene is shocked as he declares their duty is not finished and summons them in the name of Marbus. The book glows, and dark energy fills the air. Two soul forms appear, asking if he can truly bring them back. Leon says they can return as the undead, but they will lose warmth and life. He tells them the choice is theirs. Magical chains form around them as one asks what he wants in return. Leon says he wants them to serve him. They accept, and he forms a contract, asking them to swear loyalty. They agree, and the book shines brightly as the pact is sealed. Leon closes the book, hoping they will find peace after their service. Nearby, the archbishop sits beside his daughter's body while Caliban senses a strange, magical presence. Leon returns to the carriage, and the demon scolds him for acting without permission. Leon replies that he has still saved the girls in some way, and the demon admits it is a clever solution. Carlene looks to the side and agrees with him. After some time, the defeated monsters appear. Marbus then explains that to raise mindless creatures like evil spirits as undead, they must first be marked. He says they are too unstable, so marking them works better than forcing control. Leon looks down and asks how to control a thinking being. Marbus replies that such beings must be convinced to serve willingly by using their attachment to the living world. Leon frowns and asks again, and Marbus explains that strong feelings like regret and anger keep souls from leaving the world. He says a necromancer can help them resolve these feelings and, in return, use their power. He points at skeletons and calls this subjugation. Leon understands and asks if it depends on him to accept their wishes. Marbus says yes and adds that the stronger their regrets, the stronger they become. He reminds him that necromancers are not just users of the dead. Leon holds his magic book, and it suddenly shines. He calls heaven and Helen. Magic fills the air, and two forces merge into one. Soon, a holy maiden appears. Leon says he has called both and asks why only one comes. Marbus explains they are meant to be one, so their souls merge after death. Walter asks if anything has changed. Leon asks who she is, and she says she is heaven. She confirms they can switch. Then Helen appears, angry about serving him, and saying she would rather return to her burned body. Rachel realizes her true nature has been hidden. She tells him to stay quiet. Leon asks what skills they have. He warns that useless undead will be sent away. She says he speaks harshly, then moves closer and says they will prove their worth. She holds his clothes, smiles, and asks if he is interested. Leon stays serious. After some time, a blue flag appears, and Raleigh says the mission is finished. The group stands near her, and she admits she never expects it to end this way. Carlene raises her hand and says the archbishop can confirm their success, and they want their payment. Raleigh holds her head, while Rachel smiles and says it is an impressive act. He explains it takes great courage to raise a daughter as an undead in front of her father. The holy maiden angrily says she belongs only to Lord Leon. The mage closes his eyes. Marbus, sitting on Leon's shoulder, says she is very lively for someone brought back from the dead, and Leon admits he actually likes her this way. Walter says everything turns out fine since the girls are alive, though not completely. Raleigh crosses her arms and confirms the mission, granting them silver rank. She says the payment will be sent to the Marbus estate. Leon thanks her and hopes for more missions. She promises to inform him, and Carlene says she keeps her word but reminds them about the loan. Rachel jokes, but Carlene points a gun at him. Marbus tells everyone to move on and suggests testing Heaven and Helen's powers. Carlene says they should make full use of them. Later, Caliban sits near the stairs and says the archbishop has fallen into despair after losing both daughters. The prince says he should not care and can have more children. He calls him weak for despair. The emperor is disappointed and says the chance to create a holy maiden is lost. Caliban accepts blame and promises loyalty. The prince says the mission fails because of a dark mage and asks about his identity. Caliban says the spirits have disappeared and suspects outside interference, possibly a legendary necromancer. The prince thinks deeply about this. Meanwhile, the group stands in a forest clearing as Raleigh tells them to begin. The priest's daughter stands quietly, and the sorceress asks about the strength of their new servant. Leon explains that 2 souls live in her body, both with power. The girl asks again, and he raises his hand, asking to show it. He requests a strong target, and the guild leader asks how strong. Leon says it should be very strong. He decides to show Heaven first, and she agrees. She transforms and politely apologizes for her sister's behavior. Leon says it is fine and tells her to show her skills. She smiles and says she is ready. Raleigh waves her hand, and forest trolls appear. Rachel warns they have strong regeneration and might be hard to defeat. Carlene says it can be difficult, but others trust Leon. Leon asks Heaven if she is afraid, and she says no. A troll rushes at her. Leon opens his book, and a weapon appears in her hand. She strikes the monster hard, leaving a bright trail of magic. Marbus and the others are surprised by her strength. Heaven knocks the troll down and crushes its head. Leon says the demonstration is enough and switches to Helen. Helen appears and says she thinks she will not be forgiven. She says she likes showing her power. She smiles and swings a chain. A troll attacks, but she strikes it down easily. She crushes its head and says the monster should be grateful for dying for her master. The guild members watch in shock. Marbus closes his eyes and says she looks like a dangerous maniac. The gates with green banners can be seen. Leon looks up and says they have finally returned to Marbus's land. The demon beside him says they have finished their first mission and gained useful new servants, so the trip is successful. Leon says he feels his necromancy has improved. Walter says it is a shame their companions cannot stay longer. Richel smiles and says he is glad to meet the rising star of the school. Carlene reminds Leon that he still owes a large debt. Leon looks at her hand, and they shake hands, knowing their journey together is over. Rachel says he cannot stay away from the school for long, and Carlene says she still has many debtors to deal with. She then speaks to Walter, saying that although his master's talent overshadows him, he also has great ability. Rachel jokes that he would not want to meet her boss. Leon asks why, and Rachel says her leader is like a monster. Walter looks surprised, but Leon says Walter has great potential and can achieve anything if he stays loyal. Walter blushes and thanks them. Leon says Walter is one of his best followers and that he will help him grow stronger. Rachel laughs and says it is time to say goodbye, though not forever. Leon agrees. Carlene warns Leon to repay his debt on time. Leon smiles and asks why they end on such a serious note. Suddenly, Carlene raises her gun, and Leon panics, but she lowers it and says she dislikes idle talk. She says she hopes he will pay his debt before they meet again. Leon nods and watches them leave. The townspeople run toward him, happy he is back. Leon asks why everyone looks so surprised. Then Pullen runs to him, shouting and crying with joy. The necromancer lowers his head while looking at the count, but suddenly someone hits him. A girl shouts at him, asking how he can stay away from the estate for so long. He touches the back of his head and turns around. Diana stands there with her hand on her waist. Pullen hugs him, and Walter asks if he is all right. Marbus suggests they talk inside. The beast sits down and asks if she is Leon's childhood friend and the heir of House Beresha. Sitting at the table, Leon confirms this and says she is a strong spirit caster. Crow jokes that the master has another beauty. Diana says she is confused, as she does not expect to see him with a demon. Marbus tells her to think whatever she wants. Pullen says it is a long story, and others add it is hard to explain. Diana frowns and asks why he leaves without a word and joins a guild. Leon admits he has no excuse and thanks her for taking care of the estate. She blushes and says she cannot leave Pullen alone, and she has heard he will return to power soon. Leon asks if there is another reason she comes. Diana lowers her head and says she comes to check things since time is short. He asks what she means. She tells him to come closer and flicks his forehead as punishment for forgetting something important. He tries to remember. Diana explains that all noble houses are invited to a grand gathering. She says they must attend together because they are engaged. A white building appears as the event approaches. The count says the gathering is near. The young master lies on his bed, saying it is tiring, and wishing his brother can go instead. The count says 3 dark noble families must attend. Knox looks away as it is a chance to prove his place in society. The boy frowns and says, "It is troublesome." Leon is burning the buttons on his sleeve and then looks away. Diana stands with her hand on her waist, her face serious. She is the future leader and rising star of House Berettia, a longtime ally of House Marbas, and also his fiancé. Leon asks if he really has to attend the event. A maid says she believes her master is the only faithful man, but Diana replies that their engagement is only for formality. She grabs Leon's shirt and says no noblewoman will want to marry him, adding that she prefers older and wiser men. Leon calmly accepts her words. The doppelganger asks if this is for the master's good, and Pullen says it can be seen that way. The Count explains that Leon and Diana have always argued since childhood, but their families are bound together by long friendship, so they have to stay close. Leon asks her to release his collar. She turns away and says he has not changed, even after becoming head of the house. Leon replies that people who change easily cannot be trusted. Diana tells him to use his sharp words to calm their people. Suddenly, she remembers Leon's father being executed and feels shaken. She turns back and asks for forgiveness. Leon calmly says there is nothing to forgive, and his father has no regrets. He says it is their family's duty to protect their beliefs, even at the cost of their lives. Diana is surprised, but says he is still stubborn. She adds he should not miss the coming event. Leon thinks about their victory over House Sylvester and knows they must now appear before others. Pullen says other noble houses still look down on them. Leon accepts it for the sake of his house. Walter says Leon will finally gain recognition. Leon agrees to attend. Later, many nobles gather in a grand hall, laughing and drinking wine. Men and women are talking in the hall. Louis stands with a smile, holding a glass. A noble places his hand on his chest and asks if it is true that House Sylvester has lost the last battle and Alan has been defeated. Louis frowns and asks who has beaten him. The noble, sweating, answers that it is House Marbas. Reeve says things have been going badly for them lately. At that moment, Leon and Diana enter, holding hands. Leon looks ahead and says the place is louder than he expects and that he dislikes such grand events. Diana blushes but says this is the duty of nobles. Leon smiles and agrees. Diana sighs, thinking about how his strong sense of duty makes him ready to risk everything for his house. Leon asks if their companions can manage on their own. His followers smile, and he says their abilities are still growing. Diana tells him to focus on himself. Leon replies that he has already surpassed her in status. Suddenly, a noble approaches them and calls out. Leon asks what he wants. The man says he finds it hard to believe that Leon has defeated Alan and mentions strange rumors. Leon asks what is strange. The man laughs and says it is difficult to imagine. Leon calmly says he has killed Alan as his duty. The noble is shocked. Leon's eyes shine as he repeats it and warns that anyone who stands against him will see his power. The man is frightened and Diana is shocked. Leon walks away while the demon calls him a maniac. From a distance, a blond man watches with a glass in hand, then stands up. Knox smiles and says he has finally found some entertainment. Marbas frowns and says his master looks scary. Rivet also frowns and starts sweating, while Leon looks at him without emotion. Nearby nobles turn and say Lord Marbas is making a scene. A blond man watches them as people talk about Leon. Marbas jumps onto Leon's shoulder, and Leon calmly says they can talk all they want. His expression stays firm. An aristocrat walks past Leon, then stops and asks why he is provoking him so carelessly. Leon turns and says if it is about insulting the Varela family, then he should be held responsible. He adds that the other man has first mocked Marbas's victory. The man widens his eyes and says Leon's reply is like declaring war in noble society. Diana steps in and tells them to calm down. She looks at Rivet and says he has no right to speak for the Varela family, since he is only from a side branch and not even an heir. She says his behavior is disrespectful and asks if he is ready to answer for it. The man grows angry and says one victory means nothing, adding that this also applies to her. Diana smirks and says she will only be afraid if the warning comes from someone truly dangerous. Rivet becomes furious and insults her. Suddenly, someone tells them to stop shouting. Rivet turns to insult the newcomer but freezes when he sees who it is. His hand trembles in fear. Leon notices his confidence disappear. Knox stands there with a glass, smiling. He leans forward and asks if Rivet has forgotten who he is facing. The demon warns Leon that this man is extremely dangerous. The young man grabs his companion by the collar, his eyes glowing as he says he will not bow before him. In the castle, lights are on, and Walter and Pullen stand nearby. The blonde asks if Leon and Diana are managing well. Pullen nervously says yes, but it does not sound convincing. The Count closes his eyes, sighs, and admits he is worried because Leon can be too careless. They stand by the door, talking about possible trouble. Pullen says he is glad Diana is with Leon since she can handle him. Walter asks what he really knows about her besides being Leon's fiancée. The Count says the engagement is not important and explains she is more like an older sister to Leon. Walter agrees that their bond seems more like family than romance. Pullen adds that she will not cause suspicion at such an event and mentions a rumor that a social ticking time bomb might attend the party. Walter asks about him, and Pullen says he is a bold young lord from one of the 3 dark noble families, like their own. He explains this is the youngest son of House Reinhaber. Back in the hall, Reve freezes when Nox tells him his name and warns him to remember it if he values his limbs. Reve quickly bows and apologizes, saying he would never have spoken so boldly if he knows who Nox is. Suddenly, Nox pours wine over him and says it is a waste of both wine and time, then laughs loudly. Diana looks shocked, Marbus frowns, and Leon remains calm. The young man places a glass on the nobleman's head and smiles calmly. Reve closes his eyes and apologizes again. The blonde man then walks toward the Necromancer and politely asks if they know each other. He says he expects Leon to have heard of him. Diana looks at Leon and explains that this is Nox, the young master of a great house that opposes the noble houses of light. Nox smiles and asks if that is all she will say, then holds out his hand. He says he wants to get closer to Leon. Leon agrees, but only if it is for the good of his house. Nox calls him a proper leader, says goodbye, and walks away. Leon watches him carefully. Diana says Nox is the black sheep of his family, and that they probably will not meet often, but they should still be cautious. Leon asks if that is all she knows about him. Marbus, sitting on his shoulder, says Nox is a genius hiding behind a rough personality. Leon touches his chin and says he has never felt such strong and dense dark mana before. As Nox leaves, Leon says he believes they will meet again soon. At that moment, a maid comes to Leon and places her hand on his chest, asking why he helps that young man. She says nobles usually avoid such small matters. Leon calmly replies that she will understand later. The blonde man smiles and says soon everyone on the continent will know Leon's name. The maid looks confused. As they walk away, Leon says that no matter what happens, it will be something worth seeing. He smiles slightly and says he is tired and it is time to go home. Guests are talking all around. Diana looks at Leon and says that even if it is only a formality, he should act like her fiancé in public. Leon asks what he needs to do. She smiles and asks if he still remembers how to dance, since his late father must have taught him. They hold hands, stand facing each other, and begin to dance. Leon keeps a calm face while she smiles, thinking he is still well-trained and still has something of the charming boy she once knows. She turns away and says he is not her type anyway. Leon asks what she means, and she tells him to forget it and relax. Leon says his father teaches him that a noble must always present himself perfectly. He places his hand on her waist and pulls her closer, making her blush. His expression stays serious. She is surprised at how focused he is. They look at each other as they move in circles. Diana's face stays red, and she starts to sweat slightly. Other guests whisper while watching them. She closes her eyes and says Leon is still very hardworking in everything, even unexpected things. Leon replies that he wants to say the same, but she is not as flexible as before. She smiles and tells him to be quiet. Suddenly, a loud noise interrupts them. Both freeze. Leon frowns while guests begin talking loudly about the disturbance. People rush toward the door after hearing about a fight. Diana follows, worried. Outside, they see a man in dark clothes. Pullen is lying on the ground, shaking, while Walter stands in front of the stranger with a sword, breathing heavily and ready to fight. Pullen shuts his eyes in pain while the blonde clenches his teeth. Diana frowns and asks what causes this trouble. Reve grins and says she arrives at the right time. She asks again, but he mocks her tone, saying she has no strong lord behind her. Marbus frowns, thinking he is acting brave only because Nox is gone. Pullen kneels on the ground. Leon steps closer, his eyes glowing as he demands to know what his servant has done wrong. Walter turns and looks around as nobles gather. Reve shouts angrily, calling them useless and remembering how Nox humiliates him. Leon stays calm but clenches his fist. Walter explains that such gatherings are for nobles to build connections. Pullen agrees and says it is important for House Marbus, especially after their reputation suffers. He thanks Diana for her help. Walter smiles and thinks they care about each other. Suddenly, Reve raises his hand and stares at them in shock. He calls them trash from House Marbus. Pullen does not understand. Reve then calls for Colman. Walter turns and sees a man with frightening eyes. Reve orders him to deal with them. Colman hesitates, saying they are from a ducal house, but Reve insists they deserve no respect. Coleman draws his sword and tells Leon's servant that disobedience means death, challenging him to fight if he is a knight. Pullen warns Walter not to react, as they cannot risk another conflict. Walter stands tense and sweating. Suddenly, Coleman stabs Pullen in the stomach. He falls to the ground, crying out in pain, while Leon clenches his teeth in anger. Pullen is sweating but says he is fine, and tells them to think about their master first. Then Coleman kicks him hard. The man's eyes shine with anger. Walter raises his hand and stares at his enemy. He lifts his sword and turns to his friend, saying he will not cause trouble, but only wants to protect him because he cares about him just like Leon does. Pullen is shocked by his words. The enemy smiles in a cruel way and says their loyalty is foolish and they will regret it. Soon, swords clash as Walter and Coleman start fighting. Walter is tense but focused. Reeve stands nearby with a smirk. Walter pushes his opponent away, bends slightly, and then stands straight, pointing his sword forward. Diana asks what is happening. A noble says Rive is causing trouble again, while another says they will now see if Marbas's victory is real or just luck. Diana worries that Walter is too weak to fight. Then Rive challenges Leon to a friendly duel. Diana is shocked when Leon accepts. Leon gathers mana in his hand while the enemy watches with a smile. Coleman walks forward through a strange fog and says he expects more. Walter lowers his head and apologizes, but Leon says it is not his fault. Coleman attacks, but suddenly a bright flash appears and his sword and hand are thrown aside. Everyone freezes in shock. Coleman falls to the ground. Then Leon speaks calmly and declares a rule of the Marbas house. Dark figures rise from the ground, and one holds a blade to Rive's throat. Leon says they will kill without hesitation if needed to protect their house and loved ones, no matter who stands against them. Behind the young man stands his small army. Red wine is still running down Rive's face as he kneels in front of him. He looks up and angrily asks if they are looking down on him. Then his expression suddenly changes when he sees Louis standing there, watching him with pity. Reeve begins to sweat and quickly starts apologizing. The blonde prince smiles calmly and tells him to forget about formalities. He asks Rive's name, and the man leans forward, saying it is an honor to stand before him. The crown prince closes his eyes and tells him to speak directly. Reeve stands up, and Louis says he has seen everything that happens and finds it interesting. He touches his face and admits he cannot ignore his curiosity. Then he introduces Leon and Nox and asks why two dark houses suddenly join against him when they have never worked together before. Rive frowns as the prince mentions hearing strange news about House Marbas winning the recent noble war. Louis places a hand on his shoulder and quietly suggests that with some help, he can reveal their true intentions. Rive is shocked, but then starts thinking that with the prince's support, he can easily defeat Leon. He smiles with excitement, seeing a chance he does not want to lose. But then he notices a sword near his face and realizes he has made a serious mistake. He frowns and says it is wrong for a noble lord to interfere in the matters of servants. Leon calmly replies that those he calls servants are his trusted followers. Coleman lies on the ground as Rive clenches his fist and questions why Leon goes so far for them. Leon stares at him and reminds him that they will kill without hesitation if needed. Then he moves forward as skeletons follow him. He turns and orders Walter to take Pullen to a doctor quickly, and Walter nods in agreement. Diana steps forward and touches Leon, saying she is on his side but asking him to stop. Sweat runs down her face as she explains that a minor noble like Rive is not a real threat to House Marbas, and that making a scene in public will only cause trouble, so it is better to step back. The boy stays silent and looks at her. Rive then turns and notices a noble standing behind him, and his eyes widen in fear. The man gives a small nod. In panic, Rive grabs Diana and holds a knife to her neck. The demon frowns and calls it a simple and weak move. Reeve smiles and warns Leon to step back or he will test how far he can go, pointing at Diana and saying the Necromancer will not want his toy harmed. Leon calmly replies that in this case, he himself is the toy. The demon hits his forehead in frustration. Reeve raises his finger and says Leon will never allow Diana to be hurt. Other nobles stand nearby and watch. Mana begins to gather around Leon as his eyes start to glow. He says he will repeat himself if Rive still does not understand, explaining that Rive has already harmed his people and now dares to threaten Diana as well. He adds that losing a servant's hand will no longer be enough. Dark energy fills the air as he asks if Rive is insulting her on purpose. The demon tells him to act quickly because silence means guilt. Leon raises his hand and says that death is the only fair answer. Rive shouts that Diana will die, but suddenly she grabs the knife and stabs the servant holding her. Blood splashes as she smiles. A strange purple light appears in her eye. Leon reaches forward while his creatures attack the enemy. Rive falls to his knees in shock. Then Leon grabs his face, his eyes shining brightly, while Reve trembles in fear. The girl looks up and cannot understand what she is seeing. Watching the hero's back, she remembers hearing rumors about his sudden growth in power, but she never imagines it is this great. The demon on the ground says she must be very important to him, but she replies that she does not understand. Marbas adds that this side of him is new, even to him. The assistant says he has never seen such strong emotion on his master's face. The wounded man begs Leon to stop as blood splashes. The girl stares in shock. Some nobles cry out that killing at a gala is unthinkable, while others wonder if this is necromancy. An old man says the magic looks raw but very dangerous. Another says House Marbas is now seen as a terrifying force that can frighten any noble family. Someone else warns that such power can also make him an outcast. Dark energy gathers around the body, and it disappears. Leon looks down silently. Suddenly, someone claps. Louis enters and says it is an interesting scene. Leon asks if it is truly amusing, since most people find it disturbing. The prince replies that he is not offended, and instead feels inspired to witness the return of necromancy. He says this power has been lost for centuries. Leon explains that it is simply his gift. The prince asks if such gifts come only once in hundreds of years. Leon answers that he only knows his strength helps him survive and stand here as head of his house. Skeletons appear as the prince says he hopes this power will not turn against the empire. Leon replies that he also does not want his house threatened. As the prince leaves, the demon says this strength will silence other nobles for now, giving them time to grow stronger. The hero looks ahead and agrees, saying the man truly has a dark and dangerous aura. He adds that such power likely means a demon is involved. Later, they return to the city, and the demon lies on the bed while the young man sits quietly. He realizes the situation has calmed down because there is no reaction from Reve's house, so they are able to return home safely. The demon says the prince probably covers everything up and is likely planning something. The boy looks away and says their problems are growing, as they still have to rebuild their treasury, repay a huge debt, and repair the mansion. Sitting on the bed, he adds that they should follow Diana's advice and find a skilled treasurer. The girl reminds him that borrowing more money will only increase their debt and asks if he wants to leave such a burden behind. He replies that he does not want that. Crow suddenly suggests that Leon become a great necromancer, so he will never fear death and can repay debts forever. The demon rejects this idea, saying he will not allow him to become a tool for lenders. The priestess asks if they can even afford a good treasurer, since skilled managers are expensive everywhere. The young man says they have no choice. The demon adds that they must focus on urgent problems and accept sacrifices for the future. Leon agrees and says they must find a capable manager for House Marbas, even if it means hiring someone outside noble ranks. The demon understands, though he jokes that Leon sounds stingy. Leon ignores it and asks for Pullen to be brought for a council meeting. Meanwhile, the prince rests and smiles, saying the young man is truly interesting, and reveals a demon mark, noting they have more in common than expected. Many people gather in the city square around a notice. A black-haired man reads it and asks if the house really needs a treasurer. Another wonders how they can afford one. A third tells him to speak respectfully, saying their lord must know what he is doing. The first points at the notice and says it clearly states they will hire anyone, no matter their background. Someone else questions why they would offer payment to common people when they can hire a trained expert. Two others whisper, and one says most people here cannot even read, so it is foolish to involve them in important work. A girl nearby watches quietly and clenches her fist. Back at the house, everyone sits around a table. The demon asks if they are really looking for a treasurer, willing to work for only 1 gold coin. A servant confirms this. Another explains that because the imperial family is watching them, they are not allowed to demand compensation for winning the war. The butler adds nervously that most of their earnings will go toward debts, leaving them with only about 100 gold, barely enough for a month. Crow shouts that they are in another crisis. The doppelganger complains loudly about unpaid rewards. Walter says many people will apply for the position, so they must carefully choose. Leon agrees and says rumors will not help. He stands up, while the others prepare to meet the applicants. Outside, a stage and training area are set up. A large crowd gathers. A girl stands among them until someone pushes her. She turns angrily and asks who does it. A man walks past and asks if she has a problem. The girl smiles coldly and says she has not expected her rivals to be such low-level people. Looking up, the girl realizes the man is Alcar de Nagishi, the third son of the Nagishi house from her province and someone who has been following her for a long time. She lowers her head slightly and asks why he cares about what she is doing, saying she has expected him to follow her anyway. He replies that he has his own reasons. Placing his hand on her shoulder, he asks what kind of man would allow his woman to travel so far alone. Siren quickly pushes his hand away. Alcar frowns and tells her to stop being stubborn, saying she should forget her low origins and start a new life. She frowns and replies that his background is no better and asks if he really thinks his status gives him the right to take whatever he wants. He answers that it does and says he can easily claim someone like her. Siren bows her head slightly and says she does not belong to him. He angrily tells her to repeat it. She looks forward and says that one day she will surpass him. He mocks her and says her common birth makes her worthless. Siren replies that she will decide her own fate. He insults her, saying she will only be useful as someone without dignity, but she answers that even that will be better than being with him. His eyes fill with anger as he raises his hand to strike her. Suddenly, footsteps are heard, and everyone turns. A dark energy spreads in front of him, and he freezes in fear. A young man steps forward, his face partly hidden, and says that things have already gotten out of control. He walks calmly to the stage, sits down, and introduces himself. Looking at the crowd, he says they will begin the test to choose the estate's future manager. Siren turns her head and smiles, while the demon also smiles slightly. Marbus narrows his eyes and thinks there is at least one worthy candidate among them. The young man sits calmly on his chair and looks down. It is explained that after making a deal with the demon, he gains a special skill. Suddenly, his eyes and the demon's eyes glow red. This power is a sharp gaze that can look deep into a person's soul. It is said that demons naturally have this ability. They can understand a person's hidden desires and weaknesses and tempt them by using their own doubts. Once a person's will breaks, there is no escape. The young man focuses his gaze on a white-haired girl who stands among the others. She smiles calmly, and it is said that her spirit is stronger than anyone else present. Purple energy appears around the young man as he announces that the test for choosing the new manager will begin. His assistant hands him a scroll. The young man explains that the first task is to understand how serious their current situation is. The assistants give out scrolls to everyone. Each paper shows a map of the Marbus family lands and nearby areas. The young man says they are facing a financial crisis, but believes it can be solved by trading resources and goods with other noble houses. He then shows an hourglass and asks if 10 minutes will be enough for them to come up with a solution. The girl quickly opens her paper and begins working. Siren takes a deep breath and realizes she needs to think fast. Looking at the map, she sees that the Marbus lands are on the southern border and have very limited trade options, except for one mine. However, she also understands that even this mine will be hard to use because of their lack of money, making it a risky choice. Holding the paper, she also notices that there is not enough labor. The man looks down while Siren continues drawing on the map. She realizes it will be hard to attract young workers, since they cannot afford knights or mages. So she tries to think of the only advantage the house still has. Alcar, standing behind her, mocks her and says a village girl does not belong among respectable people. She glances at him and then turns away, ignoring his words. Looking back at the map, she feels the situation is very difficult. Sweat forms on her face as time runs out. When the sand in the hourglass finishes, the young lord claps and says anyone who wants to give up can leave, but those with ideas should come forward. One man raises his hand and goes up. Kneeling, he shows his plan and explains that although the Marbus lands are known as a strong fortress, they still have options for mining and production. He suggests digging deeper in the mountain mine, hoping to find valuable gems like rubies or sapphires. The lord asks where they will get the money for such work. The man admits he does not know and suggests borrowing funds from the capital or trade groups. The lord replies that borrowing is not allowed. The man is shocked and apologizes. The lord then asks for the next person. Everyone stays silent. Siren holds her map tightly, lowers her head, and tells herself she must succeed, knowing this chance might never come again. She steps forward and walks onto the stage. And everyone immediately looks at her. The demon also watches quietly, while the hero turns his gaze toward her. It is Siren, still holding the paper in her hand. The crowd begins whispering, wondering why such a young girl is there. Some mock her, saying the house must be in a very bad state if even someone like her is allowed to try. Others say the house has been struggling long before the young lord takes control. Hearing this, the lord's eyes suddenly light up. He looks at the demon and says, "This girl seems like a worthy candidate." The assistant smiles and agrees, saying she has the same potential he has seen in Walter and is like an uncut diamond. The young man focuses on her as she walks forward. He tells her to present her idea and asks her to say her name and title first. She frowns slightly but introduces herself and looks straight ahead. The Lord sits with his hands on his knees and realizes that his new ability to sense talent is a useful gift from his contract with the demon. The demon explains that from now on, he must lead and train many followers if he wants to regain his former strength. The young man replies that they should only choose the best people, not just anyone. The demon smiles and asks, what if he can clearly tell who is truly talented? The Lord turns to him as a red glow appears. His eyes begin to shine, and when he looks around, he sees different auras around people. The demon explains that the brighter the glow, the greater the talent. Watching others train outside, the young man quietly realizes he can now see the difference between them. The leader says he can now see many different colors around people, such as white, red, orange, and others. The demon beside him explains that the brighter the color, the greater the person's potential. The young man says he understands and decides to pay more attention to those who shine the most. He then raises his hand and asks another question. Looking down, he wonders if there is still hope to restore House Marbas, even with this power, and what role his own talents will play. The demon looks at him carefully, while the assistant replies that the answer will become clear soon. A dark purple aura surrounds the young man, and the demon thinks he is curious to see what the boy will offer in return. Nearby, a soft golden glow appears around the girl. The young man notices it and remembers the demon's words about rare black glows that show strong connections, like the one he has seen in Nox. Siren holds her map tightly and begins to speak. She says she will first explain the current situation. Opening the map, she points out that their lands have no special goods or strong resources for trade, so they need new sources of income. Some people in the crowd begin to complain, saying she is wasting time. The young lord immediately tells everyone to be quiet, reminding them this is still a test. The girl continues and explains that the abandoned mine is valuable, but without enough workers, it cannot be used. She says the main problem is the lack of strong young labor. Then she smiles slightly and suggests a solution. She says they should use their greatest asset, the army of the dead that has helped them win the last war. The young man's eyes widen slightly as he listens carefully. Hearing her idea, Leon shows some surprise and repeats that she wants to use the undead army. Siren replies firmly that this power is not only meant for war, but can also be used for work, such as labor in the mines. Leon pauses and thinks about her words. Around them, the other candidates begin whispering, saying she cannot be serious and that no noble would ever use their undead army like that, since nobles protect their magic and power carefully. Some mock her, saying she does not understand how noble houses work. Siren ignores them and looks straight at Leon, asking if he truly wants to restore the glory of House Marbas. He answers that he does. She then says with confidence that normal methods will not be enough and asks him to trust her, promising he will not regret it. She looks at him nervously as she finishes. Leon watches her for a moment, then picks up the Marbas medal and says she has passed the test, adding that her full idea will be discussed later. Siren is shocked and filled with joy, realizing her effort has been recognized. The other candidates murmur in surprise, while Alcar angrily questions the decision. After that, the remaining participants present their ideas, and some pass while others fail. By evening, Pullen announces that the first test is over and that the second test will be held later through personal interviews. Everyone is dismissed and leaves. Siren holds her medal tightly and tells herself she has succeeded but still has more to prove. She places the medal inside her robe and begins walking home. As she walks down a quiet street, she suddenly stops, sensing that at least 4 people are following her, which makes her uneasy. Siren places a hand on her chest and tries to calm herself. Then she picks up some dirt from the ground and holds her small hairpin tightly, turning around ready to fight. Suddenly, a hand grabs her from behind and tightly holds her throat. She struggles to breathe and thinks that she cannot even breathe properly. At that moment, Alcar steps forward with a cruel smile and says she should have stayed within her limits. She quietly says his name, and he laughs, asking if she is happy to see her future husband and mocking her shaking legs. Siren coughs and tells him to stop, saying it is wrong and she will not accept it. Alcar laughs again and says she has no choice and will do what he wants, adding that there is no fairness in the slums and she should give up her dreams. Siren refuses strongly and says she will never give in to him. She suddenly kicks the man holding her, slips free, and throws dirt into his eyes. Then she takes her knife and rushes at Alcar, but he easily avoids her attack, grabs her hand, and says he will teach her a lesson, ordering his men to make sure she stays alive. His men rush at her, but at that moment the Marbas medallion on her clothes begins to glow. The eye on it shines with dark light, and dark energy bursts out as it rises into the air. A heavy dark presence fills the place. Then Leon appears from the darkness and says he does not want to kill his own people. Everyone turns in fear. Siren looks at him in shock. He snaps his fingers and says a lord must still do his duty. Instantly, the undead army rises from the ground, covered in dark energy, waiting for his command, and Alcar becomes frightened. Siren calls for her lord in shock, wondering why he is there. Leon calmly replies that it is his duty. She answers in surprise, and he explains that a lord must find talented people for his house and will not let his people die for nothing. At that moment, Alcar falls to his knees in fear and begs for forgiveness. He says he does not know Leon has any interest in the girl and asks for mercy. The others with him run away in fear. Leon looks at him coldly and says that is a strange excuse. He then signals his undead, who slowly move toward Alcar. Leon asks if his name is Alcar and says he believes he tried to harm the girl. Alcar, shaking, promises he will never look at her again and says it is a mistake. Leon replies that if someone else had stepped in, he might have believed him, but now he does not. Alcar stays silent, still kneeling in fear. Leon then asks if hurting the weak and obeying the strong really makes him happy. Alcar, sweating, begs again to be spared. He then sees his reflection in a blade held by an undead and realizes he is about to die. Leon says coldly that his answer is not worth hearing and gives the order, ending Alcar's life. Siren is shocked by everything. Leon then tells her there is no need for another test and asks her to come with him. Later at House Marbus, it is said that Leon has killed one of his own people, and he answers that he will do anything for his house. Siren stands in the office, looking around carefully. Pullen says the man is dangerous and there is nothing to worry about. Crow says the world is better without him. Leon says the problem is solved, then welcomes Siren into service. She thanks him, and he politely asks if his formal way of speaking makes her uncomfortable. Siren replies that it is the opposite and she is not uncomfortable at all. Pullen steps in and tells her not to worry, explaining that Leon's way of speaking is simply a little unusual for nobles. Feeling calmer, Siren thanks him. Walter adds that he has also been surprised at first that a noble treats his people with such respect, but says she will get used to it over time. At that moment, Leon, holding a document, says they should move to more important matters. He explains that her role as the new steward of House Marbus will be difficult and praises her idea of using the undead army for work to improve the house's finances. Siren says she is honored but admits she is not yet sure how effective her plan will be. Leon replies that he will decide, reminding her that he is the Lord, and it is up to him how to use his army. He only asks for honest advice, while the final decision will always be his. His allies look at him with pride. Siren is surprised and thinks about how calm and clear he sounds despite being so young, believing his past hardships have made him mature. Leon notices her expression and asks if she has any questions. She says no, then silently promises herself to do everything possible to restore the house. Suddenly, Helen whispers something teasing in her ear, making Siren jump in fear, which causes everyone to laugh, while Leon remains serious. Later, in another place, a blond man laughs and questions whether House Marbus has truly risen again, calling it unacceptable. His servant says it should be impossible due to their family curse. The man replies that a rare genius can break all limits and says he will speed up his plan. The scene moves to House Marbus, where Siren talks about the plan. She says they must first start mining the family's mine and figure out how many undead Leon can control and for how long. Leon agrees immediately and says it makes sense. Pullen asks why mining comes before farming, and Siren calmly explains that mining will give faster results and higher efficiency. Crow gets excited and praises efficiency, and Leon tells her to continue. Siren thinks to herself about him, then explains that mining is dangerous but very profitable. She says using undead will keep people safe even if accidents happen. She adds that they must explore the mine to learn what resources are there and what is in demand, and then trade with richer areas. Leon smiles slightly and says, it is a good plan, but he must first check his own limits. Siren asks if all the undead she saw are the same, and Leon replies proudly that his power is far greater than that. Walter adds that even he is shocked by it. Leon then says they should go and see for themselves. In a quiet place, he summons many undead, and Siren is amazed by the number. Leon says he still has energy left. Marbus tells him to stop since they only need mining, not war. Crow praises him again. Siren asks how long he can maintain them, and Leon says 6 hours easily, or 10 with fewer undead. Walter says Leon is special, and Leon then says they will head to the mine. Lord Marbus looks at the undead and says that even if someone has hundreds or thousands of them, it is useless if they cannot control them properly. The scene then moves to Prince Louis, who speaks to his subordinate and says they must destroy the underground faction no matter what. He tells Eldoris that his role is very important and that he must stop them from rising again at any cost. Eldoris replies firmly that he understands and promises to crush them completely. Prince Louis then smiles coldly and says he has heard they are taking private loans to mine the quarry and orders him to sabotage them by any means. Eldoris agrees again. Nearby, a yellow-haired girl secretly listens and realizes it is her brother who has stopped them from paying compensation after the war. This girl is Penelope. Standing beside her is Echidna, a pink-haired noble and her trusted companion. Echidna says that removing the underground faction is important for the royal family. The princess begins to feel uneasy and wonders why her brother cares so much about one faction. Echidna says she does not know. The princess then says they must find out the truth and make sure he does not take the emperor's throne. Echidna agrees respectfully. The scene then shifts to a mine in Marbus territory, where undead are working and collecting resources. Outside, Leon sits near a tent controlling them, while Siren watches. He asks if it is enough, and she replies that it will quickly solve their urgent money problems and help the territory in the long term. Leon looks at her and says she seems happier now and that he admires people who can smile so purely. Hearing this, Siren blushes deeply. After a few days, the scene shows the undead mining and gathering valuable materials, placing them in one spot until a large pile forms. Diana is shocked and asks Leon what it is. He calmly answers that it is sapphire. She says she can see that, but wonders how he collects so much in such a short time. Leon explains that he uses the undead and also finds someone who can become a great minister, then introduces Siren. Siren greets Diana nervously, and Diana responds with curiosity. Siren says she hears Diana becomes a minister of House Marbus, then adds she is only a commoner. Diana immediately tells her not to worry about such small things and says what matters is her ability. Siren, Pullen, and Walter wait nervously for her reaction, while Crow watches from afar eating peanuts. Suddenly, Diana grabs Siren's hand and excitedly praises her idea, saying she never thinks of using undead like this and even jokes about taking her away. Leon becomes serious and refuses, but Diana laughs and says she is only joking. Pullen then asks if Diana can process the sapphire since their house cannot. Diana says it is possible but may cause a small loss for her house. Leon quickly agrees and asks about money. Diana suggests they simply agree not to sell the sapphire elsewhere and says it can sell well even in raw form. Leon questions this, but Siren steps in and says she will handle the negotiation first. Diana agrees and praises Siren's sharp thinking. Siren then apologizes to Leon for interrupting and says she will accept any punishment later. Leon tells Siren there is no problem because she acts for the good of the house. Relieved, she thanks him. Pullen smiles and says they should prepare the contract, and Diana adds they will draft it and complete the deal, offering to cover the processing cost as a service. Siren thanks her. Later, a bundle of gold is placed in front of Leon, and Pullen and Crow celebrate. It is explained that the deal works and helps reduce their debt. Pullen, with tears of joy, says they have repaid almost 20% of the loan and praises Leon. Marbus smiles proudly, but suddenly a strong shock hits like an earthquake. Leon is startled. At that moment, Walter rushes in and says the dam near the north gate has broken and will flood everything if not fixed quickly. Leon drops the gold, his face filled with anger. Pullen says repairs will cost a lot, and Crow also looks worried. Meanwhile, Siren sneezes while working. Leon orders Pullen to contact the Adventurers Guild for the highest-paying mission. The next day, he prepares to leave and tells everyone he will return with more money. Pullen cries and apologizes for not going with him. Leon tells him to stay quiet and focus on protecting the house. Pullen becomes emotional, and Crow knocks him out lightly, saying he is too noisy. Walter asks if it is fine he stays behind. As Leon leaves, Helen tells Walter to take care of Pullen, and the journey begins. Leon reads the guild mission carefully. It requires at least a silver rank practitioner, and warns that failure can lead to death. The task is to defeat the corrupted alchemist Terrell, who is hiding deep inside Impel Forest. His secret lab is located in the Wizard Corridor, and the goal is to find and destroy it. Before starting, he has to visit the Aramida School Tower and meet researcher Ran for more details. The scene then shifts to an elf woman looking at documents and worrying if the experiment will survive, since others have failed before. Rachel appears and asks if something is wrong. The elf, who is Ran, says she is worried about Terrell. Rachel asks if she has sent the request to the guild, and she confirms it, hoping someone capable will come this time. Rachel smiles, thinking of the guildmaster and trusting that a reliable person has been sent, though the mission is costly. Ran then says the one who accepts the mission looks very young, around 14. Rachel is surprised and wonders if it is Leon, then asks his name. Ran confirms it is Leon. Rachel smiles, realizing how much he has grown. He thinks the mission is too difficult for someone of that rank, but since it is approved, there must be a reason. Ran asks if he knows Leon and whether they should cancel the mission. Rachel says not to cancel and that they should wait and see, as Leon might be more reliable than others. Ran is surprised, and Rachel adds that Leon is not the kind of person who will run away in fear. The scene then shifts to Leon, who realizes why they are saved during the mission. Marbus explains that if he means saving them by turning them into undead, then yes, that is correct. Hearing this, Helen quickly says they are truly grateful because they are still alive. She explains that before, they only follow orders like lifeless bodies, but now they can see, hear, and feel again. Even as undead, just being able to experience life makes her happy. Then the other personality takes over and says she agrees with her sister, but personally wishes the master would like her more, speaking in a playful way. Marbus interrupts and says that it will take a long time for Leon to show interest in anyone, joking about his emotionless eyes. She admits it sadly, but accepts it. Leon then stops the conversation and says they should set up camp as the sun is setting. With the help of the undead, they prepare the camp. Later, Leon and Marbus sit alone. Marbus says he wants to ask something, and Leon tells him to go ahead. Marbus asks why he accepts the request from the magic tower. Leon first says there is no special reason, just that it pays well. Marbus tells him not to lie, as there should only be truth between them. After a pause, Leon admits he sees his father in a dream. He explains that his father teaches him many things and gives him a necklace, saying he can meet him again. Leon says he wants to restore his house but does not know what is right or wrong, so he hopes a dragon might help him understand his power and meet his father again. Lord Marbus says he has never told Leon that his father, Rune, already knows his uncle will kill him. Leon is shocked and thinks his father must have seen his own death coming. Marbus tells him to think of it that way. Leon remembers the painful past and says he now wants to understand his father even more, wondering why he does not run and what he tries to protect in his final moments. Marbus says all his questions will be answered by the end of the journey and that his power is enough to find the truth. Leon stays silent. Marbus then thinks that although others are blamed for Rune's death, they cannot have defeated him directly and wonders why Rune accepted death so calmly. The scene then changes as Leon arrives at the Aramita school tower. He looks around the school and says they need to find their client. Marbus asks if he has any details, but Leon says only the name is given. A mage stops him and says children are not allowed there and asks him to leave. Just then, Rachel comes down with an elf woman and calls Leon over. The mage is surprised to learn Leon is an honored guest and part of the guild. She apologizes and offers to guide him inside. Leon thanks her politely, while Marbus complains about how people judge others. Rachel introduces Ran, who greets Leon and admits she is surprised someone so young has taken the mission, but hearing Rachel's praise makes her feel more confident. Hearing this, the mage thinks it is strange that Rachel is praising someone so much. Leon then directly asks what the mission is about. Rachel smiles and says they should go inside to discuss it. Everyone enters the room, where a kettle floats in the air and pours tea into cups. Ran speaks nervously and says, there is something important to explain first. Leon listens carefully. She then says the mission difficulty has to be changed. Leon is confused but stays quiet and decides to listen. After hearing everything, he summarizes that she has lowered the difficulty rating on purpose to reduce the cost, planning to explain the truth later and offer more money. The target is Terrell, a former member of their group who has become a dangerous fallen mage. Ran admits this is true and apologizes, saying no normal adventurer can handle it. Rachel adds that he cannot fully interfere and will only step in if necessary. Leon asks why they tell him the truth instead of hiding it. Ran replies that it would be wrong to let him take the mission without knowing the real danger. Leon then says he comes for the reward and will not leave without it. Rachel suggests increasing the payment, and Leon agrees, saying the difficulty does not matter if the reward is adjusted. Ran warns that the mission is very dangerous and Terrell is growing stronger quickly. She also says she feels responsible and does not want to risk his life. After thinking for a moment, Leon smiles and says it is not a problem and accepts the mission. The scene shifts to nighttime. Lon sits on a sofa, tired, thinking she cannot understand how someone in such a situation can still ask for money. She remembers Leon's words and thinks that the Tower Master also trusts him, so he might be someone very special, like a talented monster. She then recalls Nox and thinks of him as a pale and frightening figure. Leaving the room, she goes to a balcony, leans on the railing, and closes her eyes while remembering moments with Terrell. In the past, Terrell is working and suddenly has a nosebleed. Leon feels worried, but Terrell says it is nothing serious, and that even without great talent, he will still become a good alchemist and prove that talent is not everything. Later, Terrell thanks her for meeting him, and then speaks about wishing time would stop so they would not have to face their harsh life or suffer like criminals every day. The memory ends. Back in the present, Lon sits down, feeling anxious, and wonders what happens to Terrell and why he abandons her. The scene changes to a market where Leon is buying an apple. Lana approaches him and asks for help, saying she wants to guide him because the hidden place they seek is very hard to find. Marbus tells Leon that she seems trustworthy and strong. Leon agrees to let her join, but tells her not to reveal anything about him. She agrees, though confused. Leon then says they should leave quickly, as he wants to earn money soon and avoid trouble from Carlene. The scene changes, and someone calls out from behind, stopping Lana. A strange, demon-like man with wings and horns reaches out and begs her not to leave him. Suddenly, he wakes up from this dream, breathing heavily. Sitting up, he says that he thinks all his emotions are gone, but tears still come to his eyes. With a faint smile, he admits he still has a long way to go. He then takes an injection, straps it to his arm, and injects a liquid into his body. The liquid quickly spreads, his body swells, and his eyes glow purple. He declares that he must reach the perfect state of demon power and gain the Grand Duke's favor, or he will lose everything again. As the process continues, blood comes from his mouth, and he says he needs more demon blood to evolve. The scene shifts to Lon walking through a deep forest. She watches Leon closely and is surprised that he always finds the right path without hesitation. She thinks there must be something behind his confidence. Leon calls her, and she replies, asking if there is any problem. He says nothing is wrong, but notices she seems distracted. She becomes uneasy and realizes the strange feeling around her is coming from behind. When she turns, a dark shadow attacks, but Heaven quickly jumps in and strikes it with a blunt hammer, killing it as it disappears. Lon is shocked because such creatures are usually only harmed by holy weapons. Heaven calmly introduces herself, and Leon explains she is Heaven, an undead servant. Lon, still shaken, asks how he controls the undead. Leon then reveals his identity as the Necromancer Lord of House Marbas, while Crow arrives nearby. Hearing Leon's words, Lon quickly bows and apologizes, saying she should have understood earlier and asks for forgiveness for her mistake. Leon calmly replies that he does not want respect just because of his name. Lon feels relieved, thanking Arden, and thinks he is kind for a young lord. But suddenly, Leon looks at her sharply and warns that he will not tolerate any insult toward his house. This frightens Lon, and she begins to worry that despite his calm nature, he might actually be strict and dangerous, especially since he travels with demons. Marbus then speaks in a confident tone, telling Lon not to be afraid and claiming he is generous compared to Leon. Crow, now very small, mocks him, which makes Marbus angry, and the two start arguing loudly like usual. Lon feels nervous watching them. Heaven then gently reassures her, saying she should not worry because Marbus means no harm, and even though they argue, they will not hurt anyone. Lon forces a smile but admits she is still afraid. Leon then turns serious and says they have been following a strong flow of magic, but it has led them into a trap. Lon responds that the magic from the abandoned hall is actually very weak and difficult to even notice. Marbus laughs and says her assumption is wrong, explaining that Leon, as his chosen contractor, can easily sense such things. Lon then realizes his ability must be very advanced and guesses that Rachel already knows this. She then asks how they know it is a trap. Leon explains that the steady flow of magic is likely meant to mislead them and waste their time, though the real reason is still unclear. Leon adds that even though Terrell has become something like a demon, he is once an alchemist. He explains that alchemy does not use much mana, but it needs careful preparation, so Terrell must have a hideout nearby. Because of this, they need to search the surrounding area to find any clue about his real location. Then Leon speaks seriously, saying that their enemy will not let them find him so easily. Suddenly, many wolves appear and surround them from all sides, growling loudly. Heaven quickly takes out her short, blunt hammer and gets ready to fight. Crow instantly changes form, and Leon raises his hand, creating many dark magic weapons in the air. Without wasting time, he declares that the mission has begun, and the battle starts. Heaven strikes a wolf aside with her hammer and calmly tells Leon she is ready, leaving the rest to Helen. In the next moment, the soul switches, and Helen appears with confidence, swinging her chained weapon and attacking the wolves while mocking them. Her fast attacks trap many wolves at once. Crow praises her, then rushes forward using his magic. Lon notices that almost half the wolves are already gone and is impressed. She orders everyone to step back, then launches all of Leon's dark magic weapons at once, causing a huge explosion that leaves a large crater. She is shocked at how powerful Leon is for his age. After the dust settles, Leon calmly praises everyone and tells them to move forward, saying he can feel the enemy pulling them in. Meanwhile, far away, Terrell watches them through a magical screen, shocked to see Leon. He says their meeting is destined and declares that defeating him will not be easy, promising to make Leon regret everything. After some time, Leon and his group reach the place, and he says he believes this is the correct location. Looking around, he adds that the path has been hidden on purpose to slow them down. Marbus notices old mechanisms and says they might be remains of high-level alchemy. Lon then explains that this could be the work of Terrell, who was once the most talented alchemist at their school. Leon then asks her directly about her relationship with Terrell, saying it seems they are more than just colleagues. Lana agrees to tell the truth and says everyone deserves to know the full story before facing the danger ahead. As they walk through a long corridor, she reveals that she and Terrell are once husband and wife. She then begins to recall the past. She says she first meets him in the slums after the war, when she becomes an orphan and is taken in by Richel. One day, she sees some men beating a young boy, Terrell, and demanding money from him. Richel notices the boy shows no fear or emotion. Lane asks Richel to take the boy with them, but Richel says pity alone is not enough and asks her to give a logical reason. She tries to explain that the boy might become useful, maybe as a guard, or that he might be kind, but Richel says these are only guesses. She then says he looks handsome, which makes Richel react awkwardly. Finally, she remembers a lesson from a book, saying that people should work together to go further in life. This answer convinces Richel. He approaches the men and tells them to stop, saying the boy will go with them. When the men try to attack, Richel calmly prepares to teach them a lesson. Richel uses his magic to block the man's punch, shocking him as he shouts in fear. Before the man can react, Richel moves close, gathers magic in his finger, and calmly says it will not kill him. He then fires a beam into the man's forehead, knocking him down. The others panic and run away. Richel then calls Lane, but she has already rushed to Terrell. She asks his name and why he is being beaten. Terrell replies simply that it is because he is weak. Lon insists on asking many questions at once, surprising him, and then holds out her hand, telling him to come with her. When he asks where, she smiles and says home. Richel allows it and invites him to join them for a better life. From that moment, their bond begins. Time passes, and they train together in alchemy, often arguing but growing closer. One day, Lon asks why he focuses so much on alchemy. Terrell explains that he lacks talent in magic and has realized that only strength matters in the world, so alchemy is his only path. Their dreams become shared, and eventually they become engaged, promising themselves to each other. Richel is happy but quietly uneasy. After their wedding plans, he hopes his doubts are wrong. However, their happiness does not last. Soon after their union, the scene changes, and Terrell is seen holding a bottle of demon blood, surrounded by dead bodies, showing that something has gone terribly wrong. At that moment, Lani falls to her knees and looks at Terrell, crying as she asks what he has done and why he has hurt himself like this. Terrell turns toward her with a wide and unsettling smile and tells her to celebrate with him, saying he has become the powerful man she deserves. Lane shouts at him to stop and begs him to think clearly, saying they can still ask Richel for help and return together. But Terrell, now crying, tells her it is too late. Wings appear on his back and horns grow from his head as he fully turns into a demon. The memory ends there. In the present, Lon explains that Terrell has given in to his desire for power and becomes dangerous, even attacking his own companions. He escapes before she can capture him, and this is the reason for the mission. Hearing this, Marbus says he has expected something like this, and that their enemy is not just a monster, but someone intelligent and growing stronger. Lana agrees and says they have to stop him quickly before it becomes impossible. With tears in her eyes, she activates a magic circle on the ground. Leon then calmly says he believes he has found Terrell's location. Marbus urges him to move quickly, and Leon agrees. The scene then shifts to Terrell inside a dark maze-like place, angrily wondering how they have found him so fast when the maze is meant to hide him. Suddenly, Leon stops and looks ahead as if he can see him. He says there is no need to search anymore. At that moment, The mirror Terrell is using begins to crack and then shatters completely. Shocked and afraid, Terrell does not know what to do. A spirit appears and warns him to run, saying this enemy is too powerful to fight. Terrell clenches his fist and says he is ready, adding that if needed, he will not hesitate to kill the woman he once loves. The demon stops him and says he misunderstands, explaining that the woman does not matter and that something much worse is coming, a force of death that cannot be stopped. In the next moment, Leon uses his magic and destroys the barrier protecting the area with a loud explosion. Seeing this, Terrell is shocked that the defense has been broken so easily. As the dust settles, Leon steps forward calmly, brushes off his clothes, and says he knows Terrell will be there. With a cold look, he calls him by name and confirms his identity as the corrupted alchemist. Terrell feels deep fear and realizes running might be the only choice, but he forces himself to stay calm. Feeling the heavy pressure coming from Leon, he says there is a strange aura of death around him. Without delay, Terrell gathers his mana and prepares a spell, acting out of fear rather than confidence. A magic circle appears, and dark fog bursts out toward Lon to attack her. Lon panics and tries to cast a defensive spell, warning that the attack is strong, but Marbas stops her and tells her not to interfere. He easily cancels her spell and changes into a stronger lion form, telling her to watch carefully. The dark fog surrounds Leon, and lightning explodes inside it. Terrell believes this will be enough to defeat him. However, when the smoke clears, Leon stands unharmed and calm. He coldly asks again if Terrell is the corrupted alchemist. Terrell accepts it and asks who he is. Leon releases his dark aura and introduces himself as Leon von Marbas, saying he has come to take his life. From Terrell's point of view, he looks at Leon and the dark figure behind him, Marbas, and is shocked by their power at such a young age. He says they are the same because both have borrowed power from a higher being and asks if Leon can deny it. As he speaks, he begins absorbing demonic energy around him. Lon screams his name, but Terrell smiles and says she has come too late. His body changes fully into a demon, with wings, horns, and glowing red eyes, and he declares he will complete himself no matter what. Lonnie tries to stop him, asking what he will gain from such corruption, and warning that he will become the very monster he once hates. Terrell pauses, then mocks her, saying she has come with mercenaries to kill someone she once loves, making her no different from him. He argues that in a world ruled by power, the weak are always crushed, and only absolute strength allows survival. He then creates many magic weapons and attacks Lane. Before the attack hits, Leon steps in and blocks it with a shield. Leon calmly says he has also made a pact with a demon, but not just for power. He raises his hand, and dark energy spreads as portals open and many undead appear. He says he is doing this to protect those he cares about and is willing to sacrifice anything for them. Marbas silently admires his strength. Terrell questions what difference that makes, but Leon replies that people like Terrell only destroy everything. Terrell angrily says such ideals only belong to the strong. Leon answers calmly that he once kills his own father out of weakness and has no regrets, then summons the Necronomicon. A book appears in the air, and its pages turn on their own. Leon speaks coldly, saying Terrell has betrayed Lon and their old friends, and asks if he truly feels no regret. At once, the undead rush toward Terrell. He steps back, jumps aside, and slashes at them, calling them weak puppets. As he attacks one, he notices dark energy on its skull. It is Crow. In the next moment, Crow fires a strong blast. Terrell barely avoids it and retreats, shocked. He wonders what kind of demon would give so much power to such a young boy and guesses it must be a very high-ranking one. He demands to know what Leon has sacrificed to gain such strength. Leon answers calmly that he has given up everything, his entire existence. Hearing this, Terrell grips a bottle of demon blood and decides to defend himself and force the truth out slowly. He crushes the bottle, but at that moment, Heaven jumps in and attacks him. Terrell quickly raises a magic barrier, but her hammer cracks it. He panics as the barrier breaks from raw force. Then Crow strikes him hard, sending him back as he coughs blood and falls to his knees, saying this cannot be his end. He shouts that he has sacrificed many lives for power, but Marbas cuts him off angrily. Terrified, Terrell realizes Marbas is a very high-ranking demon. Marbas mocks him and explains that Leon is not even using the power he has given him, but only his own natural strength. Terrell is shocked and laughs bitterly, saying it is unfair that he has sacrificed so much while Leon is born with such power. Lon looks at Leon and thinks about everything she has heard. including that he kills his own father, makes a deal with a demon, and helps his house win a war. She remembers people saying he has given up his heart for power and quietly wonders what he has really done. Marbus, standing behind her, tells her it is better to watch than try to understand because something more interesting is about to happen. Lon is confused, but suddenly a loud and painful scream fills the area. Helen covers her ears while Crow points upward. The ceiling begins to crack and fall apart. At the same time, Terrell spreads his arms and speaks angrily, saying Leon has always had everything while he has nothing, and now he will show the power he gains on his own. The ceiling breaks completely, and a huge spider-like creature appears. Lon is shocked and quickly realizes Terrell's plan. She shouts for him to stay away from the creature, but he only smiles and says it is too late. The monster opens its mouth to swallow him, and even though Lana attacks it with dark magic, Terrell allows himself to be consumed. His goal is to merge with the creature and combine their powers. A large explosion follows, but from the smoke come voices crying in pain, begging for help. These voices belong to the people Terrell has killed to create the creature. He coldly tells them to be silent and says they should be grateful. When the smoke clears, the terrifying form is revealed. A giant spider body covered with human faces and Terrell's body attached on top. Lon falls to her knees in shock, calling it a horrible abomination. Marbus explains that Terrell has used a forbidden and very cruel form of dark magic to gain this power. Helen looks at the monster and says this fight will be very hard. Crow speaks seriously and warns that this is not a normal enemy, so their young lord might struggle and everyone has to stay careful. At that moment, the fully transformed Chimera Terrell says the battle is already decided. He claims he will prove the Grand Duke wrong and take Leon's soul to merge it with his own. Suddenly, his heart begins to beat fast, and he notices his body moving on its own. Leon steps forward and calmly tells everyone to move back. With a cold look, he prepares his magic. Terrell angrily calls him arrogant and fires a powerful beam, but one undead jumps in front and blocks it. Terrell increases the power and destroys the undead instantly. He laughs and launches more attacks from different directions, but Leon uses his undead to defend and says that wanting power is not wrong, but there are limits. Then he summons the Necronomicon, and its eye glows red. Marbus realizes its power is about to be released and tells everyone to move away. Helen pulls Lon back quickly and tells her to stay quiet and obey. Leon then activates a powerful spell and says no one has the right to kill without reason, not even them. Lon recognizes the spell as Eclipse Snare, something no one has used for a long time. As the spell forms, a huge dark eye appears under the giant spider body, making it look very small. Dark energy flows out, and a massive mouth comes from the eye and swallows the monster completely. Helen then smiles and asks Lon if she is impressed now. After using the spell, Leon looks very tired and weak. Lon quickly goes to him and asks with worry if he is all right. Leon steadies himself, stands straight, and says he is feeling better now. Just then, Lord Marbus returns to his small form, walks up to him, and mocks him for wasting so much mana. He says Leon never listens to his advice. Leon calmly replies that while the dead cannot return, mana comes back with time. Then he turns to Lon and says he should be the one asking her something. She becomes nervous and looks down as memories of Terrell come to her mind, including his smile, their time together, and what he has become. Leon says he does not fully understand love or emotions, but he can still see that she is in pain. Hearing this, Lon begins to cry and asks why Terrell has changed, saying she loves him for who he is, not for power. Marbus then jumps onto Leon's shoulder and comments that his words sound like comfort, but Leon says he is only speaking facts. Crow jokes that Leon makes a girl cry, while Helen says she likes such behavior. Lon sits down crying while Leon stays quiet in thought. Marbus asks if he has more to say, but Leon instead asks if killing the Chimera will increase their reward. Lonnie is surprised, then laughs and says it probably will. Later, they return home. The guards announce Leon's arrival, and Walter and Pullen greet him. They praise his success, but worry about his health. Leon thanks them and says the mission is not as hard as it seems, but he feels troubled by something else. The room becomes silent, as Pullen hands him a letter to discuss the next matter. Leon takes the letter and asks what it is. Pullen smiles brightly and says it is good news, an acceptance letter from the famous Alathane Academy. He becomes emotional, saying their young lord is now old enough to begin proper education. Leon reads it and thinks that Alathane Academy is the top school in the Arkham Empire, where future heroes learn swordsmanship and magic. He remembers his father Rune telling him that this academy will help him grow beyond his limits, and that he will meet others as talented as him or even better. He also remembers how his father once hugs him and says to be strong, even though he will not be there to see his journey. Leon softly repeats those words and thinks about his own great talent. Pullen then tells him to set aside his duties for now and enjoy academy life, promising to manage everything at home. Lord Marbus, however, complains that the academy is just for rich nobles and says Leon will waste his time there. Leon calmly replies that he plans to join anyway, as it is likely his father's wish, and he does not want to disappoint him. Pullen happily agrees, saying this will help restore their house's reputation. Then the scene shifts to Nox. Someone asks if he feels nervous about going to the academy. Nox says, not really, but thinks deeply that he now has to play the role of a final villain and must act perfectly to survive, turning his name into strength and continuing forward no matter what. The scene shows Alathane Academy, the most famous academy in the Empire. A carriage stops at the large entrance. The coachman hesitates and asks if Leon is sure he wants to get off there. Leon answers calmly that this is the right place. He steps out of the carriage with his bag. The coachman looks at him and thinks that Leon does not look like a normal student of this academy. Most students are rich nobles who arrive in expensive carriages with guards, but Leon is alone and dressed simply, which makes the coachman suspicious. Leon walks up, gives him money, and pays the fare. The coachman understands his situation and only takes half the gold, telling him not to put too much pressure on himself. Leon is surprised but thankful. The coachman says it is nothing, and then asks if Leon is a new student. Leon confirms. The coachman becomes serious and says he wants to give advice. He shows a badge and explains that he is a former student of Alathane Academy. He warns Leon not to chase impossible dreams because the academy helps people grow but also makes many feel weak and lost. He explains that there is a limit for ordinary people, and the elite make sure others do not rise above them. He says the gap between nobles and commoners cannot be closed. Leon asks if some commoners have still reached the top, mentioning a famous swordsman. The coachman says that man is a rare genius far above others. Leon says he understands. The coachman then warns him to be careful because people like them are often weak in such places. After that, he leaves with his carriage. Both of them have now started their academy life at the same time. As the carriage leaves, Lord Marbus mocks the coachman, saying he talks too much and that Leon already has more than enough talent. Leon thinks for a moment and says he is not sure about that, wondering why talent causes so much pain and why people still chase it instead of giving up. Marbus tells him he is thinking too much and says he will soon see how unfair talent really is. Marbus adds and tells Leon that he is just like everyone else, watching talented people out of interest. Leon admits that might be true. Then a staff member announces that all new students must gather in the central auditorium for the principal's speech. Leon says he will face whatever is coming and goes inside. All the students gather, and someone walks onto the stage. To everyone's shock, it is a small girl holding a lollipop. The students whisper in confusion, wondering who she is and how she gets there. Marbus says ignorance is a blessing, while Leon nervously says she is dangerous. Marbus agrees and says she is extremely powerful. The girl introduces herself as Noah Von Trinity, the new principal. The students doubt her, but she releases a strong aura and warns them not to call her a child. Then she announces an entrance exam. One student complains that no test is mentioned, but she says she creates it to filter talented students. Marbus tells Leon he will pass easily, just like Nox. However, Leon stares at Nox and says something feels strange, as if someone else is controlling him. Leon realizes something even Lord Marbus has not noticed. The Nox he knows before, and the Nox standing here now, are not the same person, and that his body has been taken over by someone or something. At that moment, Principal Noah uses teleportation magic and tells everyone to do their best to survive. A large magic circle appears under all the students and begins to glow bright blue, and in the next moment, everyone is teleported away. They all appear in a dense forest. Leon stands calmly and says this is not normal teleportation magic. Marbus replies that the whole place itself is made of magic. Leon then sees many students lying unconscious and asks why they are on the ground. Marbus explains that teleportation is a high-level spell, and their bodies cannot handle it, so they are temporarily weakened. He adds that this does not affect Leon because he is already used to strong mana. Leon then remembers his butler's advice to not stand out at the beginning and stay careful in a place where nobles dominate others. He also remembers the coachman's warning about noble supremacy and realizes that the academy is not as fair as people claim. Meanwhile, Nox is still standing, though he looks slightly affected. Leon watches him carefully and feels something is wrong. He senses that Nox is strong but also in danger. Marbus agrees and says Nox is under a demonic curse that is very complex and hard to understand. Leon decides to keep an eye on him and says he can also sense a familiar type of mana nearby. At that moment, the bald instructor gathers mana and releases it with a strong burst. The instructor releases a strong burst of mana, creating a heavy shockwave. Breathing hard, he shouts for everyone to wake up, calling them careless for lying around in front of him. The unconscious students slowly wake up, confused and holding their heads. Once everyone stands up, the instructor explains the entrance exam. He says they will be divided into teams and must move through the island, which is full of magic beasts. Their task is to defeat the beasts and bring back gems with the lowest mana. A student asks why they need low mana gems. The instructor smirks and explains that high mana gems are easy to detect, while weak mana traces are much harder to sense. He says they all have talent, or they would not be here, so they must prove their focus by finding the hardest targets. He adds that the top student will receive a reward from the principal. Leon listens and says the system makes sense. Marbus agrees and explains that even the teleportation earlier is a test of mana resistance, and now this is a test of detection ability. The instructor then tells everyone to form teams however they want. The students begin talking and looking for partners. Leon notices Nox choosing to go alone and wonders why. Suddenly, he feels someone behind him and turns quickly. A girl is startled by his sudden movement and falls to the ground. Leon helps her and asks if she is all right. She is Iana von Shader from one of the 3 great dark families. She says she is fine and asks if he will team up with her. As Leon thinks, she quickly adds that she will keep his secret if he agrees. Surprised, Leon asks what she means. She hesitates and points out that he is carrying a demon on his shoulder, which shocks Marbus. Marbus looks at Leon and asks how the girl can see him and what his connection to her is. Leon introduces her as Iana von Shader, the only daughter and heir of one of the 3 great dark families. Iana politely greets Marbus and says it is an honor to meet him, adding that her mother has told her about him as a great demon from ancient times. Marbus, pleased, says at least she has good manners. Leon then asks why he has to team up with her. Iana smiles and tries to explain, but then corrects herself and says it is because of her family trait. She says the blood of a succubus runs in her family, which often causes men to be attracted to her without control. Marbus adds that such a trait can weaken a person's will and make them submit. Iana then looks at Leon with curiosity and points out that her power has no effect on him at all, as he is acting completely normal. She says she is also skilled in black magic and will not slow him down. Marbus jokes that Leon has no interest in women, even a succubus, and only cares about money. Leon replies simply that he will pay attention only if something interests him. Marbus gets annoyed, saying that is not what he means. Iana then asks Leon again if he will join her team, and Leon agrees, saying it is better to work with someone reliable. He thinks to himself that she is strong, skilled in illusion magic, and will not be a burden. Then, Iana, slightly embarrassed, asks if Leon is interested in the boy he has been watching. Leon says he is just curious. Iana misunderstands this and thinks it means love, so she encourages him happily. Leon, confused, thanks her, while Marbus realizes she has misunderstood everything. Finally, Leon says they should focus on the exam, and Iana agrees as they move forward together. As they continue, Leon remembers Marbus's warning not to show his full power. Necromancy is feared, and if such power returns while their house is still weak, others will treat it as a threat and try to destroy them. Later, in another part of the island, Leon fights monsters with his undead. While killing one, he says with slight annoyance that it is tiring to think about so many things. Iana hears him and asks if he says something, but Leon replies it is nothing and tells her to keep moving. Still, he keeps thinking about Nox, and wonders why he chooses to go alone in such a dangerous exam. Nearby, Crow and Iana work together and find a purple mana stone from a defeated monster. Iana excitedly shows it to Leon and says it has the lowest mana they have found so far and might be enough to pass. Leon calmly agrees that most people cannot sense such low mana, so it should work. However, he still looks serious. When Iana asks if something is wrong, Leon says no and points toward a snowy peak, suggesting they go there. When they reach it, they see Nox fighting Paracelsus. Paracelsus attacks strongly, but Nox suddenly uses his skill, moving so fast it looks like time has stopped. He passes by Paracelsus and runs in another direction. Leon wonders why, but then Marbus senses danger and calls out. Leon realizes a Nightwalker is about to attack Eleanor. Nox reaches there instantly and kills the monster in one strike. Watching this, Leon thinks Nox is hiding something, and an evil smile appears on his face. Leon carefully analyzes the area and sees that it's not just him that's shocked. Instead, everyone there finds Nox's behavior equally strange. It is bound to be strange, though, since this Nox is not the same person as Leon knew from before. He wonders if Nox had a change of heart. Meanwhile, Nox scolds the two classmates, asking them why they couldn't even defeat a single monster on their own. Eleanor steps up and tells Nox that he is being quite harsh on them. Furthermore, she says that whatever happened was too quick, and that mere students are neither supposed to, nor they are capable for fighting a Nightwalker on their own. Nox then turns his attention to Penelope and says that a princess like her should know that a beast will only strike when you are most vulnerable. Hearing this, Eleanor grows angry at Nox for insulting Janos' family. But before things can escalate further, the instructor arrives and asks them to stop fighting. Moreover, he announces Nox as the winner for bringing back the Black Jewel and declares everyone as the runners-up for bringing the Purple Jewel. When Eleanor asks if the White Walker was part of the challenge, the instructor says that matter is being investigated right now. For this inconvenience, he announces Eleanor to receive a compensation and offers additional rewards for Nox for saving her life, but he coldly rejects the offer and begins to walk away. Seeing this behavior, Leon turns to Marbus for his comments, and Marbus reveals that Nox is now a completely different person. In simpler terms, what was left to be achieved has now been fulfilled, and Marbus is sure that they will cross paths soon with Nox. Later, at the 4th Commercial District, Leon is searching for good alchemy potions. He realizes that the alchemy is quite difficult, especially when it comes to these group projects. Standing there, Iana says that she will make herself useful. Meanwhile, Lana is also there, frustrated that she will have to join a team with some useless noble. Leon comments that it's good to see that these two have personalities. Marbus wastes no time before taking a dig at Leon, saying he is one to talk about personalities. However, Leon doesn't hear this. Thereafter, a merchant appears and scolds Leon for wasting time, scavenging through products that he doesn't even want to buy. Leon argues that he is just trying to pick smartly, but the merchant says picking and putting down the same thing is not a smart move. Things escalate when the merchant calls Leon a beggar. This angers him a lot. So much so that Leon summons his undead army and continues charging towards the merchant. Marbus sees this and realizes that Leon is unstoppable now. Even the merchant tells Leon that he cannot do this in the middle of a market. Just then, someone in a robe appears and stands in front of Leon before he does something that he will regret later. Leon asks this person if he knows who he is. In response, the man turns around and removes his robe, revealing that he is none other than Nox. It appears that their paths have crossed earlier than anticipated,